Chapter 1789. In Salted Fish's dimension, to change one's name, one only needed to bring their ID card, household register, application report, and other documents to the household registration office to apply for a change of registration. If it was Jiang? Ji's dimension was even simpler. She just needed to log into the Heavenly Brain's personal account and apply. However, the current era was not so convenient. Not only was the process cumbersome, but he also had to face many obstacles and even public criticism. People often say, don't change your name when you're in a position, and don't change your surname when you're in a position. One's name was given by one's parents. Changing one's name without permission was enough to be labeled as unfilial. People would not change their name easily. Of course, looking at the history books, there were many people who changed their names, but they were all special cases. For example, in order to avoid disasters or the pursuit of enemies, they had no choice but to conceal their identity. For example, a person in a higher position bestowed a name and surname. This usually happened to slaves with a lower social status. Bestowing a name and surname was a form of glory and not a way to sever one's roots. For example, to avoid the monarch, most people would change their name and rarely would they change their surname. For example, a man would marry into the woman's family to continue the family line and continue the family line. In addition to these relatively common examples, there were some that were relatively rare. A typical example was Jiang Qin. Ji Hao had defeated the 3 tribes of the northern borderline. In order to accelerate the assimilation of these foreign people and to assimilate their culture, Old Master Sun Wen had implemented many targeted policies in the past few years in the northern borderline, enticing them with benefits, enticing them with beautiful words, and intimidating them with force. Gradually, many people of the 3 races in the northern borderline assimilated their surnames into the Chinese language. After tasting the sweetness, more and more people of foreign races did the same. For them, surnames weren't that important. If they could live a better life by changing their names, then so be it. That was what the people of the 3 tribes of the northern borderline thought. Some people who had learned the culture of the Central Plains saw this and felt heartache and helplessness at the same time. The imperial court of the northern borderline and tens of thousands of nobles were killed by Jiang Fei. When Ji Yi slaughtered them all, Beijiang would be completely finished. Unless Jiang? With Ji Yanran's downfall and the many families in the Central Plains divided, the northern borderline would have been devoured cleanly. After going through all these situations of changing names and surnames, Jiang? Which category did Ji belong to? She wasn't one of them. She resolutely chose to sever ties with the Lu family just because her stepmother tried to poison her and her family plotted to take over her business. Even if the person who bestowed the name and surname was an old immortal, a name bestowed by the heavens, it could not change the fact that she was fickle and resolute in this matter. His biological father, Lu Shi, was still alive. Ji Yunshu chose to change her name despite Lu Shi and Lu Zhao's attitude. Did she ask for their opinion? I really don't have any opinion on this matter. I've long been mentally prepared for this. As he spoke, Lu Shi wore a green and brown Confucian robe. His wide sleeves were tied up with his sleeves and he held a watering can in his hand. He stood leisurely by the window tending to the flowers. The fence outside the courtyard was surrounded by many precious flowers, and the fragrance of the flowers filled the air. Lu Zhao followed behind Lu Shi and passed him a pair of bug exterminators. The father and son enjoyed a leisurely afternoon together. But elder sister, this matter is too big. I heard that there have been elders of the clan coming to look for father these 2 days. A faint smile hung on Lu Zhao's lips. Several years had passed, and the immaturity on his face had completely faded away. He had transformed into a handsome young man. Yeah, I've been blocked by them for the past 2 days, so I don't dare to go out to visit family and friends. Lu Shi plucked the bugs off the flowers and leaves. He treasured the flowers and plants very much. His heart ached when the bugs gnawed a hole in them. Lu Zhao said, he's trying anything he can find in an emergency. As far as Lu Zhao knew, Lu Shi had long stopped caring about these matters. In the past, Lu Shi could still use his identity as a father to persuade Jiang. Gee, now that things are out in the open, it's still uncertain which of these 2 drama queens will call the other a tyrant. Lu Zhao wasn't very clear about the inside story, but he knew Lu Shi and Jiang Yu. Their relationship was not as loving father and filial daughter as the outside world thought. If it weren't for the fact that some occasions were unavoidable, this pair of plastic father and daughter would probably have gone to never see each other in life, never bump into each other in death. Lu Shi was fine. Jiku did not want to call someone father every day. In terms of real age, they were about the same. Why did she have to be a generation lower than him? Therefore, it was useless for the elders of the Lu family to harass Lu Shi. Lu Shi smiled and said, "How can they not be anxious when your sister is so serious? Even if you are in a desperate situation, you have to try anything." Lu Zhao pursed his lips and asked his father worriedly, "Did Jiku really do that to Lu Shi and her stepmother?" Lu Shi asked Lu Zhao to pass him a pair of scissors. He carefully cut off the excess leaves so that the flowers could bloom better. He said while cutting, "If you were a gardener and saw the messy branches and leaves in the yard, would you pull out the roots of these plants? Of course not. If they are messy, they can be pruned. Why would they be uprooted?" Lu Zhao understood what Lu Shi was trying to say. "Father, do you mean that Jiku just wants to prune the messy branches? She doesn't want to catch them all at once?" Lu Shi straightened his upper body and looked at the fenced flowers for a moment. "Catch them all at once? Maybe she wants to, but it's not now." Lu Shi smiled. "First of all, the time is not ripe. Second of all, these shrubs have deep roots and leaves. Jiku only has a pair of scissors in her hand. She can't cut them all at once. It's better to take it slow. If she can make them what she wants, that would be the best. If she can't, she can wait until they are fully grown." Lu Zhao felt a chill run down his spine. Once again he understood that he was not as good as the two actors. Don't rush for quick success. Taking it slow is the right way to go. Your sister knows this very well. How can those idiots out there be a match for her? You should learn from them. Don't be fooled by them. Lu Shi sighed. Outsiders say that your sister is very good at martial arts and can defeat thousands of soldiers. They don't know that attacking the city is the best strategy. Attacking the heart is the best strategy. People with brute force are not scary. At most, they are just a knife that can be used to kill people. The scary ones are people like your sister who are strong and good at killing people. You can't mess with them. Lu Zhao nodded. Is it the same for my stepmother and Lu Shi? It's not just Lu Shi and your stepmother. The other families are also her targets. Lu Zhao was confused, which made Lu Shi a little angry. This son of his was originally quite smart, but he hid his incompetence and pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger. Now he had really turned into a pig and his brain made people anxious. Lu Shi gave him a detailed analysis. Only then did Lu Zhao completely understand Jiang Qingho, Ji's entire plan. At the same time he also understood that it was his stepmother, Lu Shi or Jiang who betrayed him first. Ji Zhuxin was at the front. Lu Shi sighed. You're also one of the few people she cares about. If you keep your heart still, she won't touch you. What if my heart changes? Then my next target will be you. Even so, Lu Zhao still felt a little scared. Sister won't eliminate Lu Shi and the other families, but what will she do to stepmother? Lu Shi said calmly, the stepmother you mentioned is my second wife. Even if your sister changed her name, she wouldn't be able to kill her stepmother without my permission. Most likely they had a falling out, so your stepmother could behave herself and be Mrs. Lu Shi. If she still doesn't know her place, your sister might ask me to divorce her and remove her identity as Mrs. Lu Shi. Without her status as a stepmother, wouldn't it be easy to kill her? It had to be said that Lu Shi's love for Jiang? Ji's judgment was very accurate. No matter how the outside world objected and ridiculed him, Jiang Yuxing would never change his mind. Ji stubbornly changed her name and surname. No matter how fiercely the outsiders objected, it was useless. Even her biological father, Lu Shi, did not stand up to object to his daughter's behavior. What could the outsiders do? Not long after she announced the news, Gu Zhen, who was temporarily imprisoned, could not take it anymore and insisted on seeing Jiang in person. Gu Zhen was not here to admit her mistake. She was here to quibble. Ginger? Ji Bai took some time out of his busy schedule to meet her. He wanted to give her a warning so that Gu Zhen would not step on her bottom line. For the sake of Nie Sun and Meng Heng, Jiang Qinghong was willing to help. Ji still did not want to do anything to Gu Zhen. You said it before, why are you going back on your words now? Gu Zhen had been under house arrest for a few days. She had removed all her silk and satin. She no longer had any pearls, hairpins or gems in her hair. She looked very plain and haggard. Ginger? Ji didn't even bother to roll her eyes. She said, I'm not the one who broke my promise. Gu Dai was so angry that her face turned livid. If it wasn't you, then who locked me up here? I'm also your stepmother, your biological aunt. You and I both know that you're nothing. Jiang Ji sneered. I promised you back then that as long as you help me hide it, I'll give you endless glory and wealth. Let me ask you, haven't I given you enough all these years? You spend more than 10,000 strings of coins every year. I don't even have a shortage of military expenses. You've done your best. How have you treated me? What exactly are the identities of those little brats from the Lu family? Gu Zhen did not panic at all. She quibbled, Henger and Sun have been separated from me since they were young. Now that they have their own families and have their own wives and children, they are not close to me, their mother. Your father lives alone all year round. I just feel that the house is deserted. I saw that those few children were quite pleasing to the eye, so I placed them by my side to raise and take care of them to relieve my boredom. Is such a small matter worth being so suspicious of? Jiang? Ji sneered and asked, my 2 cousins are not close to you. They are all grown up, but their sons and daughters are still young. If you really feel lonely, why don't you raise your own granddaughters and grandchildren by your side to relieve your boredom? Instead, you raise the children of the Liu family? You married father to be his second wife. But other than that, what relationship do you have with the direct descendants of the Liu family? Not raising her own grandchildren, but raising children who were not related by blood at all. This was called relieving boredom? Gu Zhen still wanted to defend herself. But Ji lost her patience. I can only give you glory and wealth. Other than this, she should not even think about anything else, let alone control Jiang Ji. Gu Zhen meets Jiang? Ji became serious. She even unceremoniously tore down her hypocritical immunity. She could not help but sneer. The glory and wealth that you speak of is just a huge sum of money as charity? Jiang? Ji said, and the position of the future Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager with no power is just an old lady with some status. Doesn't she have to listen to you? Jiang? Ji laughed. You seem to be very satisfied with the Empress Dowager back then. Why are you dissatisfied now? Back then she only sought a position that was below one person and above tens of thousands of people. Now she wanted to be above tens of thousands of people. Jiang? Ji's scheme was true, but it was also true that Gu Zhen took the risk out of desperation and poisoned her. Did she really think that by poisoning her and supporting the Liu family's children, she could be the Empress Dowager who had real power over tens of thousands of people? Did she really think that Lu Shi and Lu Zhao were dead? Or did she have a whole set of other tricks up her sleeve? Jiang? Ji was very disappointed. I thought you were a smart woman. I didn't expect you to be a smart woman. Compared to Gu Min, you are not just one level lower. She will fight for the greatest benefits for herself within the limits, but you will only play a bad hand. She did not make a move on Lu Shi and took care of Lu Zhao largely because of Gu Min. Do you really think that no one knows your true colors? Ji did not look at Gu Zhen's livid face. She mocked, from the first time I met you I knew. When I hinted to you that I would give you the glory and status that Lu Shi couldn't give you, and you accepted me because of this and didn't pursue Lu Shi, whom you had watched grow up, I knew what kind of person you were. Could it be that calling you mother, and bowing to you as a junior all these years really gave you the illusion that I really treated you as my mother? Jiang? Ji spoke so rudely that Gu Zhen's face turned even more livid. It was so dark that ink could almost drip out. Stop quibbling. I dare to say this to you because I have all the evidence. Gu Zhen stopped pretending. She laughed sinisterly. What? You want to kill me to silence me? Why would I? You are still my father's second wife. How can you kill your elders? If I really wanted to kill you, I would naturally get my father to separate from you before I kill you. Ji looked down at Gu Zhen from above. Her cold voice did not carry the slightest emotion. In this life, we will not meet again until we reach the netherworld. This matter also spread out. Many people made the assertion that Jiang? Ji would be angry at the face of the person who killed her mother. A stepmother was not a biological mother. A sentence of, we will not meet again until we reach the netherworld, was enough. Jiang? Ji threw Gu Zhen to Lu Shi and imprisoned her in Lu Shi's side courtyard. Without orders, she could not step out of the courtyard, let alone see outsiders. Jiang no longer took care of her daily necessities? Ji's private warehouse was now Lu Shi's. All the preferential treatment in the past was removed. All the people who served Gu Zhen were replaced by Jiang? Ji's eyes and ears. Lu Shi was a retired person. His pension was enough, but he definitely could not squander it. After Gu Zhen was locked up, the next person to deal with was the Liu family. More and more people looked for Lu Shi in desperation. Lu Shi rejected all of them with the excuse of, the child has grown up and he does not care about the child's choice. Someone said that Jiang? Ji changed her name and did not recognize her ancestors. It was unfilial. His answer was even more unscrupulous. This name is bestowed by the heavens. A name bestowed by the heavens will not be punished. Isn't this more honorable than a name bestowed by the emperor on earth? Just as Lu Shi expected Jiang? Ji did not cut off the Liu family and left some leeway. Even so, the blow was also comprehensive. Those who should be killed, arrested and exiled were exiled. Not only were the people cut off, but a large part of the property was also taken away. The staff of the Liu family were also demoted, and put on the blacklist. The Liu family was already like this. Needless to say, the other families were all greatly injured. This was not considered tragic. What was tragic was that someone secretly pushed Jiang Ji to hit them when they were down. Under the heavy suppression, their arms could not contend against the thighs. Jiang Ji repaired them miserably. Chapter 1790. To Jiang Ji? It was not that Gu Zhen did not resist Ji's methods, but no matter how hysterical she was, her voice could not be heard outside the walls of the courtyard. If there were no accidents, Gu Zhen would probably be trapped in this small courtyard for the rest of her life without freedom. I want to see Lu Shi. Is that okay? Gu Zhen's disheveled hair made her look like a crazy woman. However, she had been pampered for many years and her skin was as fair as snow. She looked much younger than her actual age. Even though there was still a trace of madness on her face, she still looked lovely. She sneered and said, "This is Lu Shi's mansion and I am Lu Shi's legal wife. It's not too much to see him." The courtyard where Gu Zhen lived was watched by people to prevent her from escaping, going out, or contacting strangers. Lu Shi was not a stranger. He was the owner of this mansion. As long as he wanted to, he had the right to see his wife. The servant reported that Gu Zhen wanted to see him. Lu Shi's expression was not the least bit surprised. He was calm and seemed to have expected it. "Father, do you want to go and see?" Lu Zhao's cheeks were bulging as he ate. He looked like the pet hamster that Lu Shi had gotten a while ago. Lu Shi carefully wiped his hands with a handkerchief and looked down. "Let's see. We have been husband and wife for many years." Even if they were only husband and wife on the surface, there was no real relationship between them. "You're here?" Gu Zhen's eyes revealed some surprise. It was as if a drowning person had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. She tried hard to suppress her uncontrollable emotions. Her beautiful eyes were watery. She said, "Brother-in-law, are you going to let that evildoer humiliate me like this?" As a witness to Lu Shi and Gu Min's relationship, Gu Zhen knew this man's feelings for Gu Min the best. He would even love her because of her. Lu Shi walked past her and sat down on the mat next to the tea table. He looked around. This courtyard was originally the legal wife's residence. The decorations were not bad, but it was not as good as Jiang Ji's private residence. Ji had given Gu Zhen a private residence. Even though he did not deliberately pay attention to it, he had heard about Gu Zhen's life over the years. He was also surprised by her extravagance when they met occasionally. At this moment, Gu Zhen was very different from the little sister in his memory. However, perhaps that was Gu Zhen's true personality. "Isn't it good here?" Lu Shi did not look at the pleading look in Gu Zhen's eyes. He calmly stated the facts. Gu Zhen clenched her fists tightly. Her nails, which were painted with beautiful nail polish, dug deep into her palms. Her expression showed that she was about to explode. "What's good about it?" Gu Zhen still knew how to control her emotions. She gritted her teeth and said, "Brother-in-law, do you think it's good to imprison him here?" Lu Shi asked, "Do you think it's better to be alive or not? You're the only one who survived after poisoning her." If not for their friendship, Gu Zhen's corpse would have long been cold. Lu Shi didn't think that Jiang Zhe was a ginger. Ji Yunshu was a person who would care about the reputation of killing her mother. If she really cared, why would she kill her father on the battlefield? According to the history revealed by Gu Min, it clearly showed that Jiang Qinghu Ji Yunshu was a ruthless person. He killed his own father on the battlefield. Even the so-called biological father treated him this way, let alone a stepmother. It was rare for Gu Zhen to survive. Couldn't she be more obedient? "Brother-in-law, you've changed." Gu Zhen seemed to have suffered a great blow. Her face turned pale at Lu Shi's question. She said in disbelief, "So what if I poisoned her? Didn't she deserve to die? She killed your and big sister's dearest daughter. She killed Lanting and took over her identity. Now that she has achieved success and fame, she disdains Lanting's identity as a burden and throws it away. If big sister knew that your daughter was treated this way, would her soul in heaven be at ease? I only wanted to kill her to get back what I should have. What's wrong with that?" Lu Shi looked at Gu Zhen with a strange gaze. "If you really think that way, why didn't you kill her back then? Why wait until she's fully grown before talking about these big principles?" "I didn't kill her back then because I believed in big sister's words about having two souls in one body. I tried my best to treat this evildoer as Lanting, but I still couldn't do it." Gu Zhen said angrily, "She's just an evildoer who killed your own daughter. How can you still be so indifferent?" Lu Shi's lips curled into a mocking smile. He did not comment on Gu Zhen's words. Even though you are Ah Min's most beloved sister as your brother-in-law, I still have to say this. When it comes to petty tricks, you are indeed better than her. But other than that, you can't compare to her in any other way. If she were you, she would most likely stop while she's ahead and live a peaceful life. You don't have to do anything. In the future, you will be the Empress Dowager who will be supported by the world. What about now? I'm afraid you won't get anything. Lu Shi had only seen Gu Zhen turn a naturally good hand of cards into a pile of mush. Lu Shi was very clear about what Gu Zhen was thinking. She said a lot of nonsense, but at the end of the day it was all for her own benefit. Lu Shi could see clearly what kind of feelings she had for Lu Shi, her two biological sons, and her biological grandchildren. When Gu Zhen heard the two words, sister, her face turned hideous for a moment. She hated it when others used the words legal to differentiate between her and Gu Min. When Gu Min was alive, Gu Zhen had to be careful to please her. She had to maintain her sisterly relationship to maintain Gu Min's high regard for herself. Gu Zhen was able to receive the treatment of a legitimate daughter even though she was not a legitimate daughter. That was because she had carefully served Gu Min, not because of the rewards bestowed by others. In the end, Gu Min had been dead for many years, but there were still people who used the word concubine to ridicule her. When the person who said this was Lu Shi, who had a deep love for Gu Min for more than 30 years, the negative emotions in her heart became even stronger. Lu Shi said, "Are you not satisfied with being an Empress Dowager?" Gu Zhen sneered and asked, "Why should I be satisfied with being an old lady who is supported by others but has no real power?" It was like she had never been satisfied with being a daughter of a concubine. She had racked her brains and worked hard to get some preferential treatment. If she had not worked hard to climb up in the past, she would have ended up like many of the Gu family's concubine daughters. Lu Shi frowned slightly. He did not expect Gu Zhen to say it so straightforwardly. Gu Zhen said, "The opportunity is right in front of me. Why should I let others continue to control my life? In the past it was Gu Min. Now, it is the evildoer who has taken over Lu Shi's body. Is it interesting to be an Empress Dowager without real power? In the end, don't you still have to live according to others? Brother-in-law, I've had enough. I've really had enough of this kind of life. I've been watching Gu Min's face since I was 4 or 5 years old. I have to carefully please her to live a good life. If she gets angry, Mrs. Gu will secretly beat me and teach me a lesson. She is afraid that I will hurt her precious daughter. It has been like this since I was young. In the eyes of all of you, I am just a living doll that Gu Min likes." Hearing Gu Zhen belittle Gu Min like that, how could Lu Shi, who was obsessed with his wife, bear it? "Are you crazy? How can you slander Gu Min like that? Has she ever treated you badly?" Gu Min had never even raised her voice to her, let alone getting angry. She had always treated Gu Zhen as her own daughter. Gu Zhen said, "She is good to me, but didn't I get all this in exchange for being a lowly person?" Lu Shi said coldly, "There are some things that you don't even have the right to fight for, not to mention being a lowly person. She treats you well." Gu Zhen was treated badly? During the days that Ji Yu was imprisoned, her treatment plummeted. Her freedom was restricted and no one was willing to talk to her. For the first few days she had lived in fear of being killed. After that, she was depressed because of her narrow and claustrophobic life. Now she was angry because of the conversation with Lu Shi. Her emotions were like a spring that had been suppressed to the extreme, bursting out and destroying her rationality. She said angrily, "Treats me well? If you treat me well, why would you find me those marriages? In the end, I would marry Meng Zhan under your suggestion? Lu Shi, my life has been almost ruined by you and Gu Min. Now, a demon has jumped out to humiliate me like this. It's really good." Lu Shi frowned and said, "Which of the marriages that Gu Min found for you were not good?" Gu Min had been very busy for Gu Zhen's marriage. She had personally screened the groom's family background, character, appearance, and style. Even her own mother was not as meticulous. For Gu Zhen, Gu Min, who was a history bum, had racked her brains and scratched her cheeks to recall her pitiful historical knowledge. She had carefully selected those candidates for several months. The only bad thing was that their status at that time was probably not high. This made Gu Zhen very uncomfortable. The different treatment that came with being a legal wife or a concubine made Gu Zhen mentally unbalanced. Now that Gu Min had prepared such a low-class marriage for her, it would be strange if she could feel good. However, Gu Zhen had never dared to disobey Gu Min. On the surface, she was very satisfied and kept saying, "Sister, make the decision." As for what she was thinking in her heart, only she knew. When Meng Zhan had taken a fancy to Gu Zhen's appearance and hoped that Lu Shi could matchmake him, Lu Shi had agreed. He felt that Meng Zhan's family background was better and was worthy of his wife and sister. He He was willing to be a matchmaker. When Lu Shi revealed his intentions, Gu Jin had also taken a fancy to Meng Zhan at first glance. The two of them hit it off. Why was it that he and Gu Min had ruined Gu Jin's life? Is this really what you're thinking? Lu Shi felt sad for Gu Min. He had treated his sister wholeheartedly, but in the end, he had judged her in this way. Gu Jin's brain was blown a few degrees colder by the cold wind. However, the words had already left her mouth and she could not take them back. Yes, that's what I think. She gritted her teeth and admitted it. She might as well shed all pretense of cordiality. She continued, after Gu Min died, she entrusted me to you. Why did she not let me go after she died? You married me as your second wife, but all these years, you have maintained the title and relationship with me like when Gu Min was alive. You are my husband in name, but you have never touched me from the beginning to the end. What kind of husband and wife are you? Gu Min had died and still stood between her and Lu Shi. She was like a ghost haunting her. Your thinking is too extreme. You are crazy. Why don't you calm down for a few days and talk? If they continued to talk, Lu Shi would be worried about Jiang. Ji did not kill Gu Jin. He could not hold it in anymore. Jiang? Ji had never treated Lu Shi's interpersonal relationships as her own. Lu Shi, who had recovered the emotional memory of the system, would not treat humans as his own kind. If Lu Zhao was not the son of him and his lover, and Gu Zhen was his lover's sister, how could he have so much patience? Brother-in-law, do you think I am wrong? I married you for the sake of our child and your safety. I was justifiably protecting you from the Mengs. Did I force you? Lu Shi said, we had 3 rules in advance and you agreed to it willingly. Now you are accusing me and Gu Min of not treating you well. Why didn't you reject us back then? Meng Zhan is a scumbag, but you, Gu Zhen, are not a good person either. Be kind, especially when you are bullied by dogs. Learn to wag your tail and you can live longer. Gu Zhen was so angry that she almost couldn't breathe. Jiang? It is true that Ji likes to hurt people's feelings, but you have not lost your original heart. How could she hurt you? Lu Shi said, she has been providing for you all these years. Her treatment is no worse than providing for the world. She has been too good to you and you have been too successful. Your cautiousness has been worn away and your true nature has been exposed. Think about it calmly. If it was you in the past, would you behave like this? You wouldn't. If you were that kind of person, you wouldn't have coaxed Gu Min for more than 20 years. She didn't even see you clearly until she died. To put it bluntly, people are born in trouble and they die in peace. Gu Zhen was too happy and that was why her IQ dropped. It was the same logic as pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. You really don't care about me? Gu Zhen was regretful, but she refused to admit defeat. Back in Chongzhou, you and Bai Dai mistakenly thought that I imprisoned you. Bai Dai blurted out that I killed Gu Min. Do you remember? Gu Zhen's expression froze when she heard Lu Shi's abrupt mention of an old matter. I remember, but I don't think you would kill her. Lu Shi had no reason to do so. You're wrong. Gu Min wasn't killed by Lu Shi, but he was connected to the main system. From this point of view, Lu Shi was also the murderer. Lu Shi didn't explain. He purposely scared Gu Zhen and let her guess blindly. He could also get a few days of peace. He got up and strode out of the courtyard. He didn't care about Gu Zhen's emotional journey. In the afternoon of the next day, 2 rare guests came to visit. My dear nephews, please sit. Because Gu Zhen was Lu Shi's second wife, Nie Sun and Meng Zhan avoided Lu Shi to avoid embarrassment and trouble. It was rare for them to come in person. The brothers didn't have any other intentions. They just said a few words, hoping that Lu Shi would take care of Gu Zhen and not let her suffer. Lu Shi raised his eyebrows. That's it? The words sounded nice, but in reality there was no substance to it. Jiang? No matter how crazy Ji was, she wouldn't have instructed Lu Shi to abuse her second wife. As long as Gu Zhen didn't mind returning to a normal standard of living, her life was better than many noble ladies. If the 2 brothers came just to say these words, it could only be said that Gu Zhen really didn't know how to behave in the past. She had a good eye for cozying up to powerful people. She used to cozy up to Gu Min, then Lu Shi, and then Jiang? Ji, but she couldn't control herself and offended all 3 of them at once. When she cozied up to powerful people, how would she think about getting her 2 sons? When she poisoned them, she didn't think that failure would implicate her sons. Now that she was in dire straits, her sons treated her out of respect. As long as Gu Zhen ate well, wore well, and lived well, the 2 brothers wouldn't care much. Meng Heng said, I already know that mother poisoned the Lord. It was her fault. It's already a mercy that the Lord is willing to spare her life. I don't dare to ask for more. I only ask that she be safe for the rest of her life. I'll be relieved. As for Jiang? Ji or Lu Shi released Gu Zhen. Meng Heng had never thought about it. He didn't have the cheek to ask for it. Nie Sun had the same idea. Chapter 1791. It looks like my two cousins have given up on Gu Zhen. When Meng Heng and Nie Sun got up and left, Lu Zhao showed up. Lu Shi said, "They are smart. Of course, you can also say that they have been completely disappointed by Gu Zhen." That was the reason, but Lu Zhao still sighed for Gu Zhen, who was imprisoned in the backyard. Not long ago she was still in the limelight. Her food, clothing and necessities were all luxurious and exquisite. The standard of the maids serving Gu Zhen was even comparable to that of the Empress Dowager. In other words, everyone treated her as the future Empress Dowager. They coaxed her, flattered her and praised her to the skies. Jiang Ji's success was attributed to Gu Zhen's teaching. She had praised her so much that Gu Zhen had forgotten herself. Now she was locked in the backyard. Everyone avoided her. Even her two sons had given up on her. Lu Shi rolled his eyes at his son. If you have the time to worry about others, you should worry about yourself. No matter how bad Gu Zhen was, she had enjoyed so many years of wealth and prestige. Lu Zhao's life had just begun. Before he was completely safe, how could he have the time to sympathize with others? Lu Zhao said, "What's there to worry about, son? My sister and I don't compete with each other. We are counting on her to support us." As an idler, Lu Zhao was in a state of boredom every day. He wanted to find something to do. He reflected on himself 3 times a day to find out what he was good at. After thinking for a few days, he came to a conclusion: eating, drinking, playing and having fun. Spending money to enjoy life was his talent. Fighting for a career was too far away for him. Others struggled bitterly for their entire lives, all for the sake of running to the finish line of the race. His sister was the organizer of the games. He could win by squatting at the finish line without doing anything. Why would he waste his energy? It sounded so reasonable that Lu Shi couldn't refute it. Lu Shi had the urge to have a stroke. "That's all you've got?" Lu Zhao retorted. "Others have a good life, but they can't even compare to me. With his current standard of living, others would have to struggle their whole lives to reach the position of the 3 ministers and 9 ministers. In terms of annual salary, Jiang Ji's subordinates could compete with Lu Zhao. The few important ministers under Ji Yunshu could compete with Lu Zhao, but in terms of per capita disposable income, none of them could fight. Those important ministers had to deal with people, support their families and support their maids and servants. No matter how high their annual salaries were, they wouldn't have much left. Lu Zhao's food, clothing, accommodation and transportation were all taken care of by his sister. He enjoyed the treatment of a government official, and the money allocated to him was all disposable pocket money. Lu Shi was speechless. He felt more and more despair for this son of his who was walking the wrong path. Logically speaking, Lu Zhao was already married. Ji should be controlling his pocket money and letting her sister-in-law take care of the accounts. Unfortunately, Lu Zhao was shameless and hugged Jiang Qianqian. Ji's thigh cried that his living standard had plummeted. Ji gave him more pocket money. Not to mention saying such shameless words to outsiders, just thinking about it in private was enough to make one flustered. Ginger? Ji let this brat do whatever he wanted and actually approved it. Lu Zhao became more and more excited. After he and Madame Cheng had a child, he was also Chao Jiang. Ji asked for an extra share of the money for the baby. "The money I gave you before is not enough to raise a child? Jiang?" At that time Ji was fighting in Nanxing. When she saw Lu Zhao's letter, she picked up the pen and wrote such a sentence. Lu Zhao's answer was very straightforward. The child was indeed his child, but he was also Jiang Jiye's nephew. He was Jiye's nephew. No matter what, he would not lower his standard of living for his child. In the end, Ji could only approve the money for the child's milk powder and diapers. It was rare for a father to be as unreliable as Lu Zhao. Although he was in despair, Lu Shi was also gratified that Lu Zhao could be so open-minded. Gu Zhen was just too greedy and was taught a lesson. Lu Zhao did not have to worry about food and drink for the rest of his life. Ji raised him and saved Lu Shi the trouble of being a father. To Ji, anything that could be solved with money was never a problem. It was not difficult to guarantee Lu Zhao a lifetime of glory and wealth. As long as Lu Zhao did not change his mind, she was willing to support him for the rest of his life. This was also her returning the favor and repaying Gu Min's kindness to her. Even though she had never met Gu Min, she had indeed enjoyed the benefits brought by Gu Min Jiang. Ji was very clear about kindness and hatred. She would take revenge for the evil that others had done to her and remember the kindness that others had shown her. Lu Shi poured cold water on his son indifferently. There are some things that you can't stay out of even if you don't want to fight for them. Lu Xiao could not help but perk up his ears. Seeing that Lu Shi had no intention of continuing, he could not help but humbly ask for advice. I am stupid and do not understand. Please enlighten me, father. As long as your sister does not have an heir, you will be in danger of being roasted on fire. Follow Jiang? The older Ji Yi was, the more pressure she would have to bear children. To outsiders, if she did not have an heir, it was the safest to adopt her biological brother's child. Nephew and niece in Jiang? Part of Ji Ye's bloodline was the same. She could close her eyes and treat her as her own child. If that was the case, Lu Xiao would be in danger. No matter how thick-skinned I am, I can't persuade my sister to sleep with more men, can I? Lu Xiao could not help but grimace. He looked conflicted. If my sister was a man, or if the responsibility of childbirth was taken up by a man, I could also help her find a thin and plump man to send to her room. She could sleep with whoever she wanted, but that is impossible. In the end, whether she can give birth or not depends on her. This problem was too difficult for Fat Tiger. Lu Shi said, you might as well go all out and ask for it. Maybe you will get one. Lu Xiao was speechless. Father. Biological father. Are you being serious? Lu Xiao asked, what if she has an unmentionable disease and cannot give birth? Lu Shi rolled his eyes. Don't worry, she can give birth. The problem is when she is willing to give birth. If she could not give birth, how could the Empress generations that Gu Min mentioned continue? As the second female Empress of the Jiang dynasty, Jiang Yan carried on her mother's will and created a prosperous era. She also laid a good foundation for the continuation of the Jiang dynasty. If it were not for the efforts of the previous emperors, the Jiang dynasty would not have been able to retreat from the tide of reform. It was strange that the quality of the emperors of the other dynasties was different. There were wise emperors and useless ones. The emperors of the Jiang dynasty were all excellent and wise. Their average level was so high that it made people feel hopeless. According to Gu Min, among the emperors of the Jiang dynasty, only Empress Chen was criticized. The other emperors could not find any flaws. The most interesting phenomenon was that in many web novels that traveled through ancient times, the dynasties other than the Jiang dynasty were used to motivate people to struggle. Only the setting of the Jiang dynasty was used to talk about love. In the words of a few romance Yuri and romance gurus, they didn't dare to be sure that their heroine or male protagonist could surpass the Empress. Since they couldn't surpass the Empress, they would just prostitute the Empress. Underscore smiley face, angle. Underscore if she had the ability to make the Jiang dynasty a disaster area for many Fujoshi and Yuri, how could the founding emperor of the Jiang dynasty not give birth? If she did not give birth, the next few generations of female emperors would jump out of the stone. Lu Xiao said in despair, how would I know when my sister is willing to give birth? If I could, I would want to give birth to a son for her. Lu Shi glanced at his son. Now that he had grown up, he still wanted to go against human relations? To sum up, Jiang Yan was the one who was most distressed and anxious. The one who felt the most pain and anxiety was Lu Xiao. After all, this matter was related to his life. Jiang Yan was very busy these days. Ji had been very busy these days, so Lu Xiao hadn't had the chance to see her. He was sensible and would not disturb her at this time. After waiting and waiting, he finally found the right opportunity. On this day, the sun was shining brightly. Brother Rongli looked so good today. You look especially handsome. Changxing was still wearing the blue and white school uniform of the Golden Scale Academy, while Feng Yi changed into the graduation uniform that only graduates were qualified to wear. The male students all wore the same uniform with narrow sleeves and round collars. The waist belt could outline the slender figure of the youth, making him look handsome and tall. Feng Yi usually dressed in a scholarly robe. Her face was on the frail side. She looked scholarly but not heroic. Today she was different from her usual style. Changxing's eyes lit up when she saw her. She walked around him a few times. It's getting late. We still have to go to the drill ground. It will be rude if we are late. Feng Yi hooked her fingers on Changxing's palm to stop her from fiddling with the accessories on her waist. It was quite embarrassing. Changxing said, Mr. Jiang is so nice. Today is Rong Li's big day. I was worried that I was not qualified to see him. She could not see the previous graduation assessment. She thought that she would not be able to attend the graduation ceremony. GFA said that all students of the Golden Scale Academy could attend. The other branch monasteries were far away, but each branch could still send a few dozen representatives to watch the ceremony. Just thinking about it made one realize how grand it would be. When Feng Yi heard the two words Lord Jiang, she almost couldn't react. Ginger? Ji Yunshu had changed her name. The usual Lord Lanting and Lord Lu were not very useful. Ji Yunshu did not explicitly say what her name was, so outsiders could only choose between Duke Ming and Duke Jiang. Duke Ming was quite normal, but Duke Jiang was a little strange. In The Investiture of the Gods, a novel written by a certain novelist, there was a character named Jiang Taigong. Since Jiang? Ji Yunshu made it clear that she disliked the term Lord Jiang, so everyone changed it to Lord Jiang. After all, it meant the same thing. The scale of the Golden Scale Academy was not small. In addition to the representatives of the branches who came to watch the ceremony, there were more than 2,000 students in the entire drill ground. It was the same drill ground, the same group of people, but the mood of the spectators had changed. When, looking down at the large group of students dressed in blue and white uniforms, he could faintly see the grand future. Lord Jiang sure is generous. Seeing so many students, did the aristocrats feel a sense of urgency? No matter how many people there were in an aristocratic family, the scale could not reach this level, not to mention the talented disciples. But these students were Jiang Taigong. Regardless of the quality alone was enough to make most of the aristocrats restless. It was probably impossible for the aristocrats to monopolize education and official careers like before. Feng Zhu tilted his head and looked at Jiang Taigong, who was sitting in the main seat in the distance. Ji Yunshu was lost in thought for a long time. However, Feng Jin felt honored. No matter how these students developed in the future, it would not affect the Feng family much. On the contrary, the Feng family would benefit a lot from it. At the end of the day, the Feng family's foundation was different from other aristocrats. Therefore they could still talk and laugh and watch the wind and clouds. To cater to today's atmosphere, Jiang Taigong was also wearing a female graduation uniform. However, the patterns and decorations on the clothes were more complicated. She was also wearing a thin, rich and big-sleeved shirt on the outside. In terms of style, this set of clothes was also of the same series as the students. Master Yuanjing took the lead, and a few big shots of the academy spoke one after another. They had been in the education industry for so many years, but they had never been as happy as they were now. Among them, Master Yuanjing was the most happy. This year, there were a total of 181 students who had successfully graduated. The rest of them did not perform well or did not have enough accumulation to graduate. The 3 students with the best results would be given by Jiang Taigong. Ji would personally award a special graduation token. According to the rules, the top 3 students' tokens would be made of silver, the 4th to the 50th would be made of bronze, and the students after that would be made of wood. This year's top scholar was not Feng Yi, who was the most popular. It was not even a male student as everyone thought, but a female student. Although they knew it on the day the results were released, the audience was still a little surprised to see the person in person. There was a clamor of discussion among the crowd. You did very well. You need to keep up the good work for the subsequent scholar selection assessment. Jiang Taigong? Ji personally handed the graduation token representing the top scholar to the hands of the top scholar. The top scholar said, "I will not disappoint Lord Jiang." The top scholar was a handsome young man. The bullet screen in the live broadcast room was full of "Little brother, do you want a date?" The other party had never seen such a big scene, let alone Jiang Taigong. Ji was so nervous that his muscles were tense. Jiang? Ji also said encouraging words and handed the token to the top scholar. You seem to have something to say to me? Jiang? Ji saw that the top scholar wanted to say something but was hesitant, so she took the initiative to ask. The top scholar took the opportunity to ask her, I heard that Lord Jiang was assassinated. Is he better now? As soon as he finished speaking, the Confucian scholar's face turned cold and he scolded softly, Do you know your crime of peeping on your precious body? These words seemed to be reprimanding the top scholar, but in fact he was protecting him. Rather than waiting for Jiang? Ji would rather let the Confucian scholar scold him first. Ji could not pursue the matter further. Jiang? Ji waved her hand to appease him. It's not a big deal. It's just that I'm concerned about me. My body is fine now. You can rest assured. The second half of the sentence was said to the top scholar. The top scholar shyly revealed a happy expression and retreated with his hands folded in front. Feng Zhen and the others watched with strange expressions. They could not help but glance at Wei Ci from the corner of their eyes. Wei Ci was still smiling. They could not see anything wrong with him. What a joke. In his previous life, he had seen many students who were obsessed with their younger brothers and sisters. Jiang Taigong had no one else. Feng Zhen privately joked that Wei Ci's smiling face was the smile of the first wife. As they spoke, it was the third flower's turn. Feng? Ji Zhangping, Xiao Guang and the others all congratulated Feng Zhen because the third flower was Feng Zhen's eldest son, Feng Yi. Feng Zhen was so happy that he could only see his teeth, but a few jealous fellows could not help but mock him. He was not the top scholar nor the top scholar. He was only the third flower. How could he be so arrogant? He was from an aristocratic family and was surpassed by two commoners. What was there to be happy about? On second thought, some of the children of this batch were also graduates. They did not even get into the top 10, so they felt even more unbalanced. You have the style of your father, but you cannot be arrogant. You still need to work hard in the future. Don't let down your ancestors' reputation. Jiang? Ji was very familiar with Feng Yi, so she did not say much. She was more like a senior admonishing a junior. Feng Yi bowed and retreated. Ji also returned to the main seat. The following students were awarded graduation badges by Master Yuan Jing and the others. The 4th to 7th students went up one by one. The 11th to 50th students were in groups of 2. The remaining students were in groups of 5. When all the students received their graduation tokens under the witness of the crowd, 2 hours had passed. After the ceremony there were some entertainment activities. The atmosphere was not as solemn as before. Lu Zhao finally found a chance to talk to Jiang. Ji was alone. Sister, there's something I want to ask. Chapter 1792. Jiang? Ji raised her eyebrows. Looking at Lu Zhao's desperate expression, she suddenly had the urge to not listen to him. Sister, it's a matter of life and death. Lu Zhao reached out and grabbed Jiang, who was about to leave. Ji once again sighed at the plastic sibling relationship, but she said pitifully, I'm begging you for a moment. Listen to my complaints. Jiang? Ji suppressed the urge to roll her eyes or burst her veins. Lu Zhao didn't have anything good to say to her. He was either crying about being poor or weak. His pitiful look made it seem like someone was bullying him. Looking at the entire Wanzhou, even Dongqing, Beizhou and Nanxing, who would dare to cause trouble for Lu Zhao? What was the use of crying about being weak? Speak. Ji stopped and raised her hand to signal for the attendants to leave. Then she said to Lu Zhao, there's only you and me here. Can we talk? Lu Zhao was terrified. He stammered for a long time without saying anything. Jiang was furious. Ji retorted. If you're a man, be straightforward. Aren't you afraid of getting sick after holding it in for so long? Lu Zhao was speechless. Sister, I know you like to talk dirty, but you should be more pure between siblings. Don't be so dirty. I'll say it, but you have to promise that you won't hit me. He pitifully asked for a promise. No matter what, he had to get the death exemption medallion first. Jiang? Ji said, don't worry, I won't hit you. If Lu Zhao really said something he shouldn't and angered Jiang? Ji, then what was the point of hitting him? She could just beat him to death. Lu Zhao asked her vaguely, Sister, are you unwell? If she really couldn't give birth because of her body, then she shouldn't hide her illness for fear of treatment. She could secretly consult a gynecologist. Jiang? Ji didn't understand. She thought Lu Zhao was worried about her injury from the assassination last time. Her expression softened a little. The injury last time wasn't deep. It'll heal after a few days of rest. It's not a big deal. Lu Zhao was so anxious that his forehead was sweating. Who told her about this? He was asking if she could give birth. He wasn't suited for curveballs, so he could only go straight to the point. Sister, I'm asking if there's anything wrong with your body? Did those years of military life stop you from having children? Ji's face turned from sunny to cloudy, faintly showing signs of thunder and lightning. He was so frightened that he hurriedly said, Sister, I didn't mean to offend you. I really can't live on like this anymore. If you don't give this little brother a precious nephew or niece, this little brother will be forced to death. Ginger? Instead of getting angry, Ji Buki laughed and said, Who did you say wanted to kill you? Lu Zhao looked at his finger and said carefully, Those people can only be understood but not explained. I don't want to be a villain who sows discord. A few days ago I asked Father and he said that your body is fine. However, your body is fine, and you haven't had any children for many years. This really makes me a little flustered. I have specifically asked an experienced midwife and doctor. The older a woman is, for example, after 30, the greater the risk of giving birth. I'm still counting on you to take care of my family. If anything happens to you, my family will fall apart. Ginger? Ji Buki's face darkened. What do you mean? Lu Zhao put away his pitiful expression and said seriously, Sister will be 30 in a few years and it's time to take the test to have children. Let's not talk about the fact that having a child can dispel many evil thoughts, it's also good for your body. When you get older, you won't have as much energy as you do now, and it'll be more difficult for you to have a child. If you have one at this age, it'll be easier for you in the future. Ginger? Jibuki said meaningfully, it's so troublesome to have children on your own. It's better to adopt one from you. You won't be stingy with a child, right? This short sentence was like a bolt from the blue to Lu Zhao's ears, exploding his scalp. He was so frightened that he knelt on the ground and grabbed Ginger. Jibuki's skirt was sobbing and she looked frightened and pitiful. Lu Zhao got into character so quickly. She really wondered if he had specially studied acting all these years. Sister, I dare to sell my son for glory. Madam will be the first to kill her husband to prove her Tao. Do you think I'm scaring you or testing you? Lu Zhao shook his head. A dragon will give birth to a dragon, a phoenix will give birth to a phoenix, and a mouse's son will dig a hole. Your nephew took after his father, and my future children will most likely take after me. It's fine if the age difference between the two children is a little big. If the age difference isn't too big, the boy will most likely be beaten to a pulp. He should learn from me to eat, drink and enjoy himself. Such difficult and life-threatening work is really not suitable for him. Lu Zhao didn't doubt Ginger. Ji's words were true, but he was more worried about the future situation. What if Ginger? Ji didn't intend to have children. It was also good to adopt someone else. Would he throw the child to Ginger? Ji educated him. But Ginger? If Ji had her own child, then the adopted son would be a whetstone. When the knife was sharpened, it would be kicked away. Of course, the child could also kill and sharpen the knife. But was that possible? Look at Ginger. Ji knew how fierce her future child would be. The child raised by a woman with such a character, unless he was congenitally retarded, would not be of a low level. Lu Zhao was self-aware. Although Lu Shi always mocked Lu Zhao for pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger, there was nothing wrong with his brain. It was just that he was possessed by a drama queen. Jiang? Ji was speechless. Lu Zhao really had the strongest desire to live she had ever seen. I recently had this idea. Lu Zhao had already put it this way. Jiang? Ji might as well reveal something to help Lu Zhao save his dignity. What idea? Lu Zhao blinked blankly. He couldn't react for a while. When he understood, he couldn't help but let out a cry. Ji frowned and immediately stopped talking. She tried hard to lower her voice and said, Sister, are you saying that you have plans to get one? Jiang? Ji's expression was indifferent. It was as if this matter was as common as eating a meal. She couldn't understand the excitement of others. Yes, I want one. She had never mentioned this idea to Wei Ci. The first person she revealed it to was Lu Zhao. Lu Zhao also understood the underlying meaning. He said with a strange expression, From what you mean, you've been deliberately using contraception? No wonder there was no movement even though he was strong. Feng Jin and the others didn't seem to have any reaction, but they were actually worried sick about this matter. What else? Jiang? Ji asked in return. Even you came to me to urge me. If I don't consider it, how long do I have to delay it? She naturally had this idea not because Lu Zhao came to her to urge her, nor was it a sudden impulse. After several days of careful consideration, she finally decided to have one. Wei Ci quarreled with her that day. Although they didn't get angry, Ji still seriously reflected on herself. She didn't want to have children. Her original intention was to make the time of pregnancy as close as possible to the time that Wei Ci knew. She wanted to give him hope and make him believe that this child was the Jiang Yan he owed a lot to. If there was a chance to have another Wei Tsong in the future, she would at least fulfill his wish. However, after that quarrel, Ji found that doing this would only evoke Wei Ci's memories of his previous life. It would make him recall the failure and pain of that life over and over again. Why was this necessary? Since he was reborn, he was different. Why was he still clinging to the various things of his previous life? She and Wei Ci would still have new children. Perhaps they would still be called Jiang Yan or Wei Kang. After all, these two names were quite nice. It would be a pity to give them up. However, the two children would definitely not repeat the ending of their previous life. Anyway, they were different. Why not change it more thoroughly? For an ordinary woman, having a child might be a matter of course, but for Jiang Chen, having a child was not a big deal. But Jiang? Ji tossed and turned and struggled for a long time. The world regarded women's childbearing as normal, but she came from an era where natural childbearing was zero. To her, childbearing was more terrifying than a great flood or a ferocious beast. When I go back, I must buy 8 or 10 artificial incubators. The old chief poured a bucket of cold water on her. You Abba, forgive me for being blunt. The price of an artificial incubator is 10 times your annual salary plus bonus. How much savings do you have? Can you even afford 8 or 10 of them? This kind of equipment is a strategic resource of the Federation. Private ownership requires strict approval. Think about it. Jiang? Gee. It was really annoying to pour cold water on her at a time like this. Jiang? Ji had something on her mind. She ate absent-mindedly that day at the celebration banquet. When she returned at night, she was even greeted by Wei Ci. Lord, are you feeling uneasy? When Wei Ci heard Feng Ju, that brat, say Jiang, Ji was distracted 7 times during the banquet. Her jealousy kept bubbling up. Ever since the Lord changed her name, the number of times Feng Ju came to the government office had skyrocketed, as if he had a second spring. If not for the fact that one of the parties involved was Jiang? Wei Ci really wanted to write an anonymous letter to Feng Ju's wife and ask her to teach Feng Ju a lesson. Jiang? Ji did not speak. She just hugged Wei Ci. The two of them hugged and rolled on the floor. As they rolled, their clothes were almost gone. Wei Ci still had the sense to touch the raincoat under his pillow. He had used it many times and was familiar with it. In the end, looking at the raincoat that was accurately thrown into the brazier by the Lord, Wei Ci was at a loss for a long time. The procedure was wrong. Shouldn't throwing the brazier be done after? It was done before. Jiang? Ji said, that thing is in the way. She did not wait for Wei Ci to react. By the time he reacted, what should be done and what should not be done had already been done. Where are we going? Jiang? Ji Zhua hugged Wei Ci's shoulder. The two of them were at the age where they were full of energy. They fooled around for a long time. It was the middle of the night. Where was he going if he was not in bed? Wei Ci said in annoyance, I didn't pay attention just now. I'm going to get some medicine for the Lord to make contraceptive soup. There were no hidden dangers in using the raincoat as a contraceptive, but drinking the soup was different. Even the contraceptive soup with the least side effects would be harmful. Every medicine was 30% poisonous. Jiang? Ji turned over and said, keep it. Wei Ci maintained his posture of sitting up for a long time. It was as if a string in his mind had snapped. Keep it? Lie down and sleep. I'm cold. Jiang? Ji's voice was lazy and hoarse. It was the kind of voice that made one's legs go weak. Wei Ci nodded blankly. His movements were so stiff that he lay back on the bed. His arms and legs were stretched out as straight as a log. He stared at the beam of the roof until his eyes were sore. Only then did he regain his train of thought. Lord, the Lord said to keep it? Didn't this mean that the young Lord was coming? Jiang? When Ji was in a daze, she felt Wei Ci's palm hovering over her lower abdomen. She wanted to touch it but didn't dare to. She flipped over and retreated a little further towards Wei Ci. It was the same for the next few days. Jiang? Ji was the same as usual. Her work efficiency did not decrease but increased. Wei Ci was like a scholar who had his yang energy sucked dry by a demoness. He was dispirited. Feng Longzi was still teasing him. The Lord is not even 30 yet. Why are you like a wolf and a tiger? Look at Wei Ci. He had been sucked dry. He didn't dare to say this in front of Jiang. But Wei Ci was thin-skinned. It was fun to bully him. Wei Ci said, what nonsense are you talking about? I've been worrying about other things recently. I can't eat or sleep well. Looking at the things piled up on his hands, Wei Ci pushed them all to Feng Zhen. Why me? I haven't been feeling well these few days. I'm afraid I've made mistakes in government affairs. Wei Ci said, you and I are close friends. Do you still need to say such a small thing? Feng Zhen was speechless. Wei Ci said again, the Lord is precious. He needs to be in awe at all times. Your joking words just now have crossed the line. If he told the Lord, Feng Longzi would probably be skinned alive. Wei Ci used both the carrot and the stick. He moved Feng Longzi and threatened him. Feng Longzi gave in. While Feng Zhen was fighting with government affairs, Wei Ci found a cushion and a table. He leaned against it and took a nap for the whole afternoon. Careless in making friends. Careless in making friends. Wei Ci slept soundly. Feng Zhen could only grit his teeth as he watched. Jiang? Ji knew what Wei Ci was worried about. She smiled and said, it's not the first time. Are you still not used to it? Wei Ci said, this has nothing to do with the first time. As long as it was this person in front of him, he couldn't feel at ease. Jiang? Ji said, it's useless for you to be anxious now. You won't be able to tell in a few months. She was in good health. She was in a state of vigorous qi and blood all year round. She could often feel her slippery pulse, but it wasn't the pulse of pregnancy. Even if she had a child now, she probably wasn't sure if she was pregnant. That was the case for outsiders, but Jiang? Ji's mental strength was extremely strong. She could immediately know if there was a foreign object or another life form in her body. She didn't need to feel her pulse at all. Wuxia was speechless. Actually, even if the Lord was 6 or 7 months pregnant, he might not be able to tell. Underscore smiley-faced, Engel. Underscore when a normal woman was pregnant, she would most likely be bloated and have a big belly. But Her Majesty was different in his previous life. Her belly would only become bigger in the last 3 months. Before that, it was no different from not being pregnant. So when Her Majesty used the excuse of feeling pregnant, the world miraculously accepted this setting. Because in their eyes, Her Majesty's pregnancy was really only 3 or 4 months under smiley-faced, Engel. Under so, is she pregnant or not? Jiang? Ji smiled like a flower and asked, why don't you guess? Wuxia was speechless. He couldn't guess. Oh Jiang? Ji acted like nothing had happened. She ate, drank and slept as she should. Wuxia on the other hand had become thinner these days. When outsiders asked, Wuxia used preparing for the scholar selection examination as an excuse. In the end he won praise and said that he was respectful. But Fengju found some clues. These days Lord Jiang seems to be very concerned about the battle reports from Zhongzhou. Jiang? Ji said, the situation in Zhongzhou is related to Wenjing and Zidao's many plans. Seeing that Zhongzhou is about to lose and is about to fall into our hands, wouldn't it hurt if someone jumped out and took this piece of meat away? Naturally, I have to keep an eye on it to prevent any changes. Fengju's senses were sharp. He faintly felt that Jiang? Ji was still hiding something. Chapter 1793. After all, Fengju was not a roundworm in Jiang Pingji's stomach. How could he know everything? Not to mention Fengju, even Wuxia who slept beside her, could not guess what Jiang Pingji was sincerely hiding. Normally that would be the case, but there were always accidents. Jiang Pingji's secret could not be hidden from anyone. This person was not a bystander, but the old chief who knew Jiang Pingji's schemes very well. Your dad, Colin? Jiang Pingji was eating breakfast. Recently her taste had changed. She would not be happy without spicy food. All the chilies in the kitchen were eaten by her. Breakfast should be light and nutritious, but who dared to say no when Jiang Pingji was willful? Under her strong request, the meat porridge and steamed bun for breakfast were also added with chili powder, and it was a super spicy chili. The onlookers felt their tongues hurt when they looked at her, but Jiang Pingji acted as if nothing had happened. She finished the bowl of porridge in a few mouthfuls. Not only did he like spicy food, but his appetite had also increased. In the past, 1 bowl of porridge was enough to fill one's stomach. Now he had to eat 2 big bowls for breakfast, basins as big as wash basins and 10 steamed buns. If breakfast was already like this, then lunch and dinner should be even bigger. Roughly speaking, it should be 50% bigger than before. Sans Hisangsha's snacking. Is the host's stomach connected to a 2-dimensional black hole? Mala tripe. Is that the point? Wasn't the main point that the host didn't gain any weight despite eating and drinking so much? I'm so jealous. They were born in an ancient gourmet country with 8 major cuisines, yet they had bodies that would grow fat just by drinking water. That kind of pain was something they couldn't tell others about. Looking at Jiang Pingji's appetite, which had remained the same for more than a decade, their jealousy was about to overflow from their screens. Even though Jiang Pingji was eating a dark dish of mushroom and beef porridge sprinkled with chili powder, the salted fish were hungry just by looking at it. At this time, another eye-catching golden bullet screen flew across the screen. This was the exclusive privilege of the unique Almighty in the live broadcast room. Don't want to lose weight? Wow. It was the first time I saw a big shot say something. The old chief was the only person that the salted fishes knew who could deal with Jiang Pingji. He was the boss of the bosses, or simply known as the big boss. Lai Ping Rin Shou, grab the big boss's tail for a photo. Those who want a photo line up. Foodie who eats delicacies, huh? Why did boss send 2 messages? Was there any meaning to it? Fuxing Yueshao, I seem to be able to see through the 3 question marks in the boss's mind. Jiang Pingji gulped down the last of the porridge. She picked up a folded handkerchief and wiped her mouth. She patted her flat belly and burped. Satisfied, Jiang Pingji sighed and looked up to see the 3rd, floating in the middle of the screen. Old chief, your account was hacked? 3 question marks in a row didn't seem to be her style. It seemed more like a random message from a little brat who had stolen her account. Your Abba, you're the one who's been hacked. With a tick, a private message was sent. The old chief did not want 5 million people to watch the conversation between him and Jiang Pingji, so he chose to chat privately. Jiang Pingji said, "If your account wasn't hacked, why didn't you say anything and only sent question marks?" There was silence on the old commander's side for a long time. "Your Abba, don't play dumb. I don't believe you didn't notice the changes in your body." In their era, the standard for determining death was from brain death to spirit dissipation. In other words, as long as the spirit did not dissipate, there was still a possibility of recovery. Under such circumstances, people paid more attention to their mental state. The old chief did not believe that Jiang Pingji did not notice. What did she notice? She noticed that there was a weak, small, and unfamiliar spiritual fluctuation in her spiritual world. Yes, there was no mistake. The single strand. The old chief realized that Jiang Pingji did not remove it. Instead, she showed a protective stance. That was thought-provoking. Even if he had not seen a pig run, he had eaten pork. The old chief immediately thought that it was a natural pregnancy. In other words, Jiang Pingji was pregnant. The commander of the Federal Army knowingly broke the law. Jiang Pingji rested her chin on her hand and said, "You noticed?" "That's right. I can't hide this from you." Just like how Jiang Pingji could tell that Jiang Nongqin was pregnant with a glance, the old chief could also determine whether Jiang Pingji was pregnant based on her mental state. "Your Abba, why so sudden?" "I've been planning for the past few years. I'm only free this year. There are too many people urging me to get married. I want to give them a surprise." "Your Abba, are you sure this isn't a shock? This is the young lord they've been looking forward to for a long time. Isn't the shock followed by ecstasy? I don't want them to rush to me one by one." Jiang Pingji yawned. Although pregnancy did not put much of a burden on her, she still felt sleepy and weak from time to time. "Your Abba, what do the others say?" Jiang Pingji said, "I won't let them know for now. It'll save us a lot of trouble and prevent people with ulterior motives from deliberately plotting against us." The longer the pregnancy, the more opportunities there were for people to plot against her. Jiang Pingji did not want to waste her energy dealing with those demons and monsters. Perhaps her state of mind had changed. Jiang Pingji also planned to pave the way for the child in her womb. No, it might not be a child. "When the time is right, I'll announce it to the public." When would the time be right? Wait. She and the old chief's conversation was in a private channel. No one knew what they talked about except for the two of them. After that day, Jiang Pingji's appetite and taste changed again. She ate more and her taste became darker. Somehow, word of her appetite got out and became a topic of conversation among the common people. Wanzhou was a place where plump was considered beautiful. The people thought that Jiang Pingji ate hard because she wanted to gain weight, but she just could not gain weight. These rumors are too outrageous. Who spread them? Jiang Pingji was indignant. Her appetite was normal and she did not shed tears because she was thin. The guy who spread the rumors came out to be beaten. Wei Ci said, "The governance of the manor is strict. No one dares to spread rumors, but does my lord still remember having a meal with Feng Ju, the third son of the Feng family at Zhika House? No matter how strict the management of Zhika House is, it's still a public place. There are many people coming and going. There must be people who saw my lord eat a little too much." Jiang Pingji, Feng Ju, and Huang Song were the only ones in the private room, but the three of them ate like 30 people. With a little inquiry, they knew whose stomach most of the food went to. Jiang Pingji became famous with one meal. Just as Yang Tao once complained, Jiang Pingji conquered the world mostly because of her appetite. If she did not conquer the world, she would not be able to support herself. When this matter reached the ears of the people, there were countless speculations. It was normal to speculate that Jiang Pingji ate a lot to gain weight. Some people even said that she was the reincarnation of Tao Tai. She ate a lot and was cruel. Of course, there were also people who said that Jiang Pingji practiced divine skills and that she consumed a lot of energy to fly in the sky and travel underground. It was because the food in the mortal world did not have enough spiritual energy. Although she had eaten the food of 20 strong men, the spiritual energy she had absorbed was barely enough for her to be 80% full. Some people said that Jiang Pingji was not actually alone. She had thousands of doppelgangers, so her appetite was huge. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Had the people of Wanzhou been brainwashed by the novelists under Wei Ci? Weren't they afraid that their wild imagination could not be stopped? It was impossible to stop it. Without imagination, life would be as boring as stagnant water. Fortunately, as the end of May approached, the people no longer focused on Jiang Pingji's appetite. Their attention was attracted by other gossips. Not only was the examination the liveliest event in the history of Wanzhou, but it was also a large-scale face-slapping scene. How many gentry swore that they did not want to participate in the examination and compete with gentry. At the end of the face-slapping they said, "How delicious." It was impossible not to participate in the examination. It would never be possible because Jiang Pingji, the shameless woman, had banned the recommendation, abolished filial piety and inspection. Of course, it was not right to say that it was abolished. The official reason was that after the examination, there would be sufficient manpower for the time being. The places in each place would be given priority to the gentry who passed the examination. Only then would they live up to their trust and hard work. Jiang Pingji would give it a try first. If the gentry who passed the examination was not good enough, she would replace them with people who were qualified to inspect the examination or those who were filial piety. If the gentry who passed the examination was not enough, people who entered officialdom through other means could replace them. Jiang Pingji did not make it clear, but looking at the students of the Golden Scale Academy, a batch of leaks would mature in 1 or 2 years. No, a batch of students would graduate. If they were given priority every year, would the other gentry who did not belong to the academy stand out? In other words, if they did not participate in the examination, they would not have the chance to become an official. In the past, they could join some families as advisors or serve as incompetent military advisors in the local government, using it as a stepping stone to climb up, but now this path was cut off. When Jiang Pingji announced the news, some gentry who had a keen sense immediately realized that something was wrong. Even if they were humiliated, they had to participate in the examination. If they missed this opportunity, they did not know if they would have another chance in the future. With similar thoughts, many gentry who were from the side branches secretly asked their servants to sign up for them. However, it was the first examination. The publicity was not strong and the impact was not deeply rooted in people's hearts. Not many people signed up for the examination. Including the first batch of graduates of the Golden Scale Academy, there were only about 1,000 gentry who signed up for the examination. This was incomparable to the million gentry who signed up for the national examination in the salted fish dimension. Jiang Pingji had a list of vacant positions in the government offices of various prefectures, counties and towns. Even if the 1,000 gentry were accepted, there would still be a lot of vacancies. Of course, Jiang Pingji did not plan to accept all of them. Some important positions would be filled first. She would let the various offices operate first and enter a virtuous cycle. When the next batch of leaks. No, when the students graduate, the situation would get better. Because of her health, Jiang Pingji did not personally preside over the examination. Other than the court examination which she attended, the officials took care of the rest. Perhaps it was because Jiang Pingji often did not do anything, but no one suspected the deeper meaning behind her laziness. Moreover, Jiang Pingji did not preside over the examination, but she did a lot of things. The characters of these gentry should also be assessed. Those with good characters and honest temperaments can be sent far away to train. Those who are disobedient can be placed nearby. Their positions don't have to be too high. Let's suppress their arrogance. Jiang Pingji said casually, but it made things difficult for others. Feng Zhen asked, "How do we assess their character?" It was hard to know what was in a man's heart. If one met someone with good acting skills, even a devil could be packaged as a flourishing white lotus. Jiang Pingji said, "Don't the records of the graduates of the Golden Scale Academy remain? If this batch of students is of good standard and can pass the examination, then they should be sent far away to train for 3 to 4 years. When the time comes, we can transfer them to a higher position. That way I can be more at ease." Feng Zhen was surprised. According to the rules of officialdom, a position close to the political center. Even a small official was a level higher than a high official in a remote and desolate place. She probably did not understand. Simply put, those who were far away were not valued. Those who were placed nearby were the ones who were in the emperor's heart. How could the mayor of the capital and the mayor of a local area be of the same rank? Feng Zhen thought that Jiang Pingji had misunderstood and was about to explain. Jiang Pingji said, "Do you know what 'the mountains are high and the emperor is far away' means? If people with imperfections in character or fierce temperaments are placed in places that I cannot control, they will deceive their superiors and the people will suffer in the end. Although this batch of students from the Golden Scale Academy is a little naive, they all have a drive in them. They often dare to do things that old foxes do not dare to do. This kind of person is also the best at seeking the welfare of the people. By sending them far away, not only can we use difficulties to hone their abilities, but we can also make them do good things for the people." Her way of thinking was different from others, but she always had her reasons. With that said, Fengzhen understood. Stubborn diseases need strong medicine. My lord's painstaking efforts. I hope they can understand. Jiang Pingji said, I will guide them. There was always a reason why those places were backward and barren. Perhaps it was a natural disaster or a man-made disaster, or perhaps it was the collusion of local tyrants and local officials. For example, in some small places on the salted fish dimension, people from a small village with dozens of households would fight to be the village chief. They would show off their official authority, but in private, they would embezzle the tens of millions of assets from the village's immigration plan. In ancient times when information was not developed, there were many examples of such corruption. This phenomenon was the stubborn disease that Fengzhen spoke of. The students from the Golden Scale Academy were a strong medicine. Even if one dose could not eradicate the disease, it could more or less improve the focus of the disease. Has Wen Zheng sent any battle reports today? Jiang Pingji had been paying special attention to the situation in Zhongzhou recently. She would ask if there was any new news almost every day. Yes. When Fengzhen saw the orange panda emblem stamped on the envelope, he was shocked. Previously, the battle reports sent from Zhongzhou were all green emblems, which meant that they were daily news, nothing major. According to the weight of the battle reports, the emblems stamped on the envelope were green, yellow, orange, crimson, and pure black. Although the orange emblem was not at the level of using fast horses for transportation, it also meant that the situation in Zhongzhou had changed. They needed to be vigilant. Jiang Pingji opened the battle report and read it carefully, then put it away and burned it. When the next battle report arrives, send it here immediately. Fengzhen was anxious. The situation in Zhongzhou has changed? Jiang Pingji smiled and said, there has been a change, but it's a good thing. As for how big a good thing it is, I'm not sure yet. You Abba, why are you hiding it? Of course it's to build momentum. What else? There are no coincidences in this world, only painstaking planning. You should understand this principle, old chief. You Abba, build momentum? Jiang Pingji said, for the little enemy in my belly. Chapter 1794. The old chief would not be surprised if he heard it from someone else, but it was different when it was Jiang Pingji who said it. How could she not know Jiang Pingji's temperament? Although I can't see your expression right now, I can guess that you must be very surprised, right? Although he was asking a question, his words were full of certainty. Jiang Pingji understood him as much as the old chief knew Jiang Pingji. You Abba, I am indeed a little surprised. You don't look like someone who would do such unnecessary things. In the eyes of the idle audience, it was human nature for parents to plan for their children. It was a parent's duty. However, this judgment was not very useful in Jiang Pingji's era. The Federation did a survey. More than 73% of the people were unmarried and infertile. They would rather spend their time and energy on work, creating value, enjoying life, and accompanying their lovers. Very few people would like to raise a child and teach a baby who was like a blank piece of paper to learn about the world bit by bit. Firstly, many young people felt that they were not capable of playing the role of a good parent and could not be responsible for the other's life. Secondly, the Federation had a perfect system and organization. The quality and efficiency of teaching children were better than that of young parents. Thirdly, with the rapid development of economic civilization, young people were under great pressure to survive. Even if they were to take care of their own children, they would let the family robots take care of them. Since the introduction of the artificial incubation chamber, this trend slowly became mainstream. In the past, there were people who doubted that education without parental involvement would not produce outstanding children. Children who lacked love would have psychological defects. However, when it was put into practice, the effect was very good. Many parents had their own flaws, such as personality defects, moral defects, and violent tendencies. They taught these to their children, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Even if they subconsciously restrained themselves, humans were not perfect. It was impossible to be vigilant and restrained at all times. The family babysitting robots did not have these flaws. They always showed perfection to their children. No matter how mischievous the children were, they could teach them over and over again. They would not gradually lose patience like ordinary parents and show negative emotions to their children. Children who caused trouble could not avoid due punishment by acting coquettishly or crying. Except for a few special cases where they were born with genetic defects and could not empathize with ordinary people, most children's education was better and more efficient than ordinary parents. This kind of education had its pros and cons. The pros were obvious, but the cons were also quite obvious. Taking Jiang Pingji as an example, she resonated with the identities of the commander of the army and the lord. She knew how to love her subordinates, how to weigh the pros and cons, and how to deal with and manage the situation. This was because these were instilled in her from a young age. As a warrior, she would not abandon her comrades. As a commander, she would look at the bigger picture and do her best to protect her soldiers. As a lord, she would not disappoint everyone's hopes. However, no one had taught her how to play the role of a parent. Jiang Pingji had naturally longed for her own parents, but she had never thought that she would become another child's parent. If they didn't have this concept, they naturally wouldn't adjust their character's positioning. Instead, they would choose a character they were familiar with. For example, a lord and his subordinates or a king and his subjects. The former dominated the latter, and that was the role of giving orders. Jiang Pingji only needed to tell them what was the right thing to do. If they encountered any difficulties, she would let them solve it themselves instead of guiding them from the side. If Jiang Pingji was at the old chief's age, she would probably use this senior and junior template. But she was not that old yet. Jiang Pingji was unfamiliar with the role of a parent. She could only explore it by herself. The old chief thought that he was going to give her some pointers, but he didn't expect Jiang Pingji to wake up first. It was impossible to expect Jiang Pingji to be enlightened by herself. There were most likely hidden secrets that others didn't know. No matter what, Jiang Pingji's change was a good thing. I didn't want to make these unnecessary arrangements, but Jiang Pingji recalled Wei Si's previous life, and her chest was filled with irritation for no reason. But this world is different from ours. The children here are too weak. They are so weak that they can be taken away with a minor illness. Unlike the newborns in the Federation, each of them is equipped with a home care robot. Even their parents can't hurt them. Once a child came out of the artificial nursery chamber, the child's genes would be bound to a home care robot. From birth to 10 years old, the robot's protection level for the child was the highest. From 10 to 15 years old, the protection level would gradually decrease. After 18 years old, the protection level would be completely separated from the home care robot. During the protection period, even the parents could not harm the child with any malicious intent. In this era, it was impossible for a child to be beaten, scolded, or to be strangled or drowned in the toilet just because it was a girl. That was because the home care robot was equipped with a combat mode. The combat mode was created by collecting the physical and combat data of thousands of martial artists. Even Jiang Pingji, who was at her peak in her previous life, could not subdue the robot without using her ultimate skill. Not to mention ordinary people. Once the robot's protection mechanism was triggered, the lightest punishment would be to be rubbed against the ground. The most serious punishment would be having their joints dislocated. They would be prosecuted and deprived of custody and custody rights. Their reputation would be blacklisted and they would not be able to enjoy the various benefits provided by the Federation. There was also a lame joke on the internet. A netizen ranked the combat power of each family member. An 8-year-old son could not defeat his wife, and his wife could not defeat him. He could not defeat his 8-month-old daughter, and the 8-month-old daughter could not defeat her 8-day-old brother-in-law smiley face, angle, The younger the child, the higher the combat power of the bound home care robot, and the looser the restrictions on the use of force. This was normal for Jiang Pingji, so in her mind, babies should be the safest. But in this era there were no home care robots. Babies were the weakest. In troubled times they would be used as food by cruel murderers. Even the barbarians in the south wrote a cannibal rhapsody. It was a voluminous 400 to 500 words. Each word was stained with blood. They proudly said that baby's flesh was the most tender. If such people were in Jiang Pingji's era, they would have been killed on the spot by the home care robot and smashed into minced meat. Jiang Pingji was indignant before. She wanted to kill as many of such people as possible. Now that she had become a mother, her violent emotions were particularly strong. Because she could not imagine that the tender flesh that was widely discussed in the cannibal rhapsody would come from her own flesh and blood. Realizing this, Jiang Pingji would naturally learn to play the role of a home care robot and give the children the protection they deserved. Chapter 1795. Jiang? Ji said it in a domineering manner. The old general was so quiet that he seemed to have disconnected. After a long while he slowly climbed up. Your Abba. Although I don't want to disturb you from showing off your domineering aura, I have something to report to you. Jiang? Ji raised her eyebrows and asked, what is it? Your Abba, you may not be able to give birth to a normal child. I can't tell you the details. You mean this? Jiang? Ji said, I had a hunch. It's not normal for two embryo sacs to only have one spiritual fluctuation. The two embryo sacs should be twins, but there was only one spiritual fluctuation. This meant that only one embryo sac was normal. It would make sense if one of the embryo sacs didn't grow, but it was strange if the two embryo sacs were growing at the same speed. Jiang? Ji thought of the inside story that the old general had revealed earlier. She was already mentally prepared. According to the old general Jiang, Ji would definitely return to the Federation to continue being the commander of the army. She might even take over the position of the old marshal. She was so important that she couldn't spend her entire life in this time and space. This plane was so important, but the Federation still needed to borrow Jiang? Ji had accumulated the luck from this era to survive the disaster. Then, she needed someone to take over and maintain the dynasty so that the luck could continue to flourish and even improve. After thinking about it, Jiang? Ji felt that the old general was the most likely candidate. This was because she had only met one old acquaintance so far. The old general's ability also fit the criteria. Of course, this was only her guess. When she found out that the embryo sacs were abnormal, she was even more certain. The body prepared for the old general couldn't have an owner. That was because seizing someone's body was a capital offense in the Federation. If the old general really wanted to take over the mess, he could only use a body that had no soul. It's good that it's you. After all, you're someone I know. If it's someone I don't know, I'll complain to the Federation. This world was far away from the Federation. Although it was a little backward, ambitious people could do well here. Jiang? Ji didn't want someone who knew her for a long time to ruin her hard work. Even if it was a small farm, she had worked hard for many years to get it. This time, it was the old general's turn to be silent. Your Abba, you really don't mind? You're not going to ask me why I did it? Ginger? Ji Yunshu waved her hand. I trust the old man's ability. He's definitely more reliable than a nanny robot. His daughter and the old general were twin sisters, and he could even make the old general call his mother obediently. Just thinking about it made him feel so comfortable that he wanted to moan. Most importantly, with the old chief joining them, the problem of the children's education would be solved. The only thing that bothered him was that the body that the old leader wanted to use was Ginger. It was very strange that it was produced by Gigi. I was wondering why my appetite had grown so much recently, and my appetite had even increased explosively. So it's all because of you. Your Abba? She was not going to take the blame for this. By the way, when are you coming online? Your Abba, after you give birth, I don't want to experience the feeling of coming out of the birth canal. Ginger? Ji's face darkened. Wimpy. You make it sound like she's reluctant. No, Ginger? Ji Yunshu suddenly thought of something. If the old general came online with a new body, who would buy things for her in the future? Who knew how long the Federation would let her stay in this world? At the very least, they would have to wait until the old chief's body reached adulthood and he could take charge on his own. If that was the case, it would be at least 18 years. What was the concept of 18 years? Ginger? Ji Yunshu couldn't help but plan for her own blissful sexual life. In the future we will not only be superiors and subordinates, but also mother and daughter. Then I'll be straightforward. Where are you now, old general? The old general asked her gently what she wanted. Ginger? Ji Yunshu said, if this is the ancient era when technology was just budding, help me buy a few hundred boxes of that. I need to stock up. The old general? Ginger? Ji Yunshu asked again, do you know the gender of the new body? The old general? Whether it's a man or a woman, you have to be responsible for yourself and your partner. It's very painful to give birth frequently, so you should buy more. I'll help you stock up. I don't know how long you'll be staying here, but it's definitely more than 18 years. It's better to be prepared. Ginger? Ji Yunshu's words were meant to tease the old general. Everyone in the 7th Division knew that the old general smoked, drank, fought, and had tattoos on his arms. However, he was an old-fashioned and serious old cadre. If she came to this era, she probably wouldn't learn from Ginger. Ji Yunshu was a dog of pride. She thought that she would be greeted with a thunderous roar from the old general, but he only replied with 5 words. Your Abba, thank you for the reminder. Ginger? Ji Yunshu? Excuse him? System notification. Your friend, your Abba, has gone offline. He must have gone somewhere to do wholesale. Could it be that I've misjudged him? This guy is wearing the skin of an old cadre, but his heart is exceptionally frivolous? Has she muttered Ginger? Ji Yunshu suddenly felt waves of heat coming from her waist. It was so hot that she almost unsheathed the god-slaying saber. She looked down and realized that the source of the heat was actually the saber at her waist. She raised her hand to touch the hilt of the saber and pulled it out. She realized that the usually white and shiny blade was slightly pink. Ginger? Gee. A lot of dirty 18x content suddenly floated in her mind, such as human saber play and whatnot. I remember that the old general once called the virtual spiritual being in this saber, Zai. Could it be that it's not a child but, mortals would never understand the taste of a big shot. Speaking of which, if Zixiao calls me daddy during that time? Ginger? Ji Yunshu's imagination ran wild. He'll probably break down. To achieve this achievement, who knew how many years of teaching would be needed to take this step? Under smiley face, Engel, undersure Ginger? Ji Yunshu could only put away this thought. The grandeur of the scholar selection examination was far grander than the graduation examination of the Golden Scale Academy. Scholars gathered in Wanzhou. Many scholars from other villages came because of its reputation, but when they stepped into Xiangyang district, they felt the embarrassment of farmers entering the city. Everywhere they looked was novel, but at the same time, they felt a sense of rejection that was out of place. Many scholars heard about how prosperous Xiangyang was when they came for the examination. But no matter how they imagined it, they always felt that the so-called prosperity was only a little more majestic and lively than the county they were in. Only when they saw it with their own eyes did they understand what it meant to be a frog in a well. Because of this, they made a lot of jokes. Wanzhou, which already had a strong learning environment, held elegant poetry gatherings everywhere. Scholars from various families were invited to exchange ideas, exchange what they needed, and at the same time, get to know each other. Many scholars from other villages thought that they could come and look down on the country bumpkins, but they didn't expect to be watched by scholars who had lived here for a long time. A certain scholar mentioned a certain unique book, saying that this unique book was a book collection of some aristocratic family and they wouldn't lend it to outsiders easily. He used a lot of connections to borrow it to read, and it was very precious. He thought that he would attract the envy and flattery of his acquaintances, but in the end, many people looked at him as if he was an idiot. After asking carefully, he found out that the Golden Scale Pavilion had a complete set of books that anyone could read. Chapter 1796. The Duke of Lanting is too despicable. Such arguments were occasionally heard in the tea-houses and taverns, but the crowd did not argue with them. They thought it was a few hotheads who wanted to use such methods to become officials. It was not like there was no such example in the past. In ancient times, a scholar criticized a certain monarch in the market. The monarch did not kill the scholar for the sake of his reputation. Instead, he tied the scholar up and sent him to the monarch. The monarch asked the scholar why he criticized him. The scholar spoke with fervor and assurance. Every incident touched the monarch's heart and pointed out the hidden dangers that the monarch was most worried about. With a series of actions that were as fierce as a tiger, the scholar caught the monarch's attention. From then on, he stepped on the clouds and was promoted all the way. The monarch earned the reputation of being a kind and generous bolo. The scholar also earned the reputation of being an intelligent and resourceful horse. The story of the monarch and the minister was passed down as a legend by the later generations. With the example of their predecessors, many latecomers wanted to imitate them. However, they did not imitate them and instead became sensationalists. Moreover, there were many ways to become officials now. The scholars from poor families did not need to use such a suicidal method to gain fame. The imperial examinations were around the corner. Those who wanted to use such a method to gain fame were either stupid or stupid. Talented people were not afraid of the imperial examinations. Those who should be on the list would still be on the list. Without talent, even if they gained fame, they would only be a joke to others. How is the Duke of Lanting hateful? His friend tugged at the scholar's sleeve and corrected him. Everyone knows that she has changed her name and cut all ties with the Liu family. Now, she is using the Jiang surname bestowed upon her by the heavens. You should respectfully call her Lady Jiang. If he used the old title once or twice, it could be said that he was not used to it. However, if he still used it after the correction, it would mean that he was dissatisfied with Jiang Pingji. How precious are books? That scholar was indignant and had a pained look on his face. His friend was puzzled and echoed, "They are indeed precious." The scholar continued, "Such precious books are naturally only suitable for scholars to possess. Those peasants from all walks of life should not covet them. The Duke of Lanting does not know this. Instead, he made so many books in the Jinling Pavilion public. All kinds of filthy and smelly things can come and dirty the scent of ink for no reason. His family had quite a collection of books. Although he didn't think that his collection could compare to a noble family like the Feng family, it was more than enough to beat up a poor family. In his hometown, there were many scholars from poor families who flattered him in a roundabout way. They did not even hesitate to send their own sisters and daughters to please him, just to borrow his family's books for a few days. He had been proud of this for many years and looked down on those who came from a poor family. No foundation was no foundation. Where was the arrogance of a scholar's character in his bowing and scraping manner? However, this sense of superiority was smashed to smithereens when he arrived in Wanzhou. He had seen many scholars from humble backgrounds spend several years in the Golden Scale Pavilion, following the lectures of the great Confucian scholars nearby. Their knowledge and experience were more than 3 streets behind him. Yesterday at the assembly, he had been ridiculed by 2 disciples from a poor family for being a frog in a well, and they had called him a country bumpkin from the countryside. He had always been the one looking down at others from above. Since when did others have the right to mock and ridicule him? The disparity was too great. He was unable to accept it. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. After going around in circles, he felt that everything was Jiang Pingji's fault. Books were owned by the aristocratic families. The poor could only bow and scrape to have the right to peep into the sea of knowledge. The commoner should be ignorant for life. This kind of extreme thinking lingered in his mind like a messy cluster of thorns, growing and spreading in his heart. Originally, he was confident that Toad Palace would win, but after coming to Wanzhou and seeing so many unscientific poor families, he suddenly felt a pain in the ass. If the poor were like this, how could those aristocratic families who had a long foundation be? The atmosphere of the imperial examinations was not proper. Asking him to take the exam with the poor was an insult to him. It was fine if he did not take the exam. He was not the only one who held this kind of thinking. The temple is small but the wind is strong. The pond is shallow and there are many turtles. Changxing listened and frowned. Her eyes were filled with disdain for these people. He doesn't have much ability. He doesn't reflect on himself and instead picks on others. How can he be so arrogant? It's just a funny joke. Why does Changxing care so much? In the private room, Wuxia and Changxing sat opposite each other. The room they were in was not far from the table outside, so they could hear it quite clearly. Changxing said, "I feel indignant for Brother Rongli. He actually has to compete with such a despicable person." Wuxia laughed. They speak so bluntly. They may not be qualified to participate in the imperial examinations. If this kind of person is allowed to climb up, the commoners will suffer. Little did they know that the 2 of them were not the only ones who heard this. Jiang Pingji, who was in the private room next door, also heard this. She came out purely to relax. She wanted to see the commoners' lives, but she didn't expect to hear such harsh words. It's better to eliminate this kind of idiot from the beginning. Letting him enter the written exam is a waste of my paper and ink. Most of Jiang Pingji's subordinates were poor, but there were also many aristocratic families. The 2 groups got along quite well, and there were no sharp conflicts for the time being. Who knew what kind of chemical reaction would happen if such an idiot was allowed to enter? She walked back and asked Wei Ci to send people to investigate. She found that there were many idiots like this. I thought this kind of idiot was one of a kind. I didn't expect them to be assembly line products made from a mold. Jiang Pingji yawned and said sleepily, "Eliminate them by manipulating in the dark. If their character and morals are not good, they can't be used no matter how talented they are." Feng Zhen and the others agreed on the surface, but they were secretly pleased. It was fine if they didn't use their brains, but they actually fell into Jiang Pingji's hands. They really didn't know how to spell the word death. After all, this kind of idiot was in the minority. The first imperial examinations were held as scheduled. In order to uphold the principle of fairness and to promote the imperial examinations at the same time, other than the written exam, all the other events were open to the public. Of course, not everyone could come and watch this open event. I heard that Lord Jiang once attended the graduation assessment of the Golden Scale Academy students. Why is there no sign of him in the imperial examinations? Could it be that they looked down on the scholars? Someone else said, "Wasn't Lord Jiang assassinated that time?" There are many scholars in the imperial examinations. There are crooks mixed in with the honest folks. They have to consider Lord Jiang's safety. With this explanation, many people felt much more at ease. Someone else said, "I heard that there will be a big change in the next imperial examinations. We haven't even finished this year's examinations and you're already thinking about the next one?" Of course I'm thinking about it. If there's no next imperial examinations, how can we scholars from humble backgrounds become officials and serve the emperor? All kinds of rumors spread among the scholars. Time passed day by day. After 3 rounds of screening, only 50 people entered the court examinations. The rankings of the other scholars were out. Among the 50 people in the court examinations, more than 70% of them were scholars from the Golden Scale Academy. The students with the worst results were within the top 500. When the statistics were out, many people who were pessimistic were slapped hard in the face until their faces were swollen. Chapter 1797. On the day of the court examinations, Jiang Ji received a battle report from Zhongzhao. The insignia on the report was black. Jiang Ji Yunshu opened the letter and carefully read every word 3 times. Wen Zheng has never disappointed me. She didn't burn the letter. Instead, she put it in her sleeve. She would need it later to build momentum. Since Jiang Ji decided to have a child, she wrote a letter to Qiguan Rang at the border, asking him to take over half of Zhongzhao in the shortest time possible. Taking over half of Zhongzhao was not difficult, but Jiang Ji set a time limit for this task. Zhongzhao was in a mess because of Qiguan Rang and Sun Wen. There were no less than 20 independent feudal lords. The internal strife was more serious than in Dongqing. Nie Qing was in dire straits and had long lost control of the situation. The Nie family's assets were also taken by the side branches. The elders of the other branches also jumped out to stir up trouble. In a short year or two, the situation had evolved into the present. Jiang Ji couldn't swallow all of Zhongzhao in one go, but it wasn't difficult to divide the cake into a dozen pieces and slowly nibble it away. Qiguan Rang had this idea. He took advantage of Nie Qing's weakness and took advantage of the fact that the Nie family had little control over Zhongzhao to split them and stir up conflict among the various factions. At first they could still control it. But later on they were in a frenzy. Who cared about the country? Even if they wanted to control themselves, they couldn't stop Qiguan Rang and Old Man Sun from sending people to fan the flames. Jiang? When Ji's letter reached Qiguan Rang, he had already decided to close the net after the autumn harvest. He had been afraid that Beiyuan and Xichang would take the opportunity to catch the cicada. In the end, he sent people to investigate and found that the situation in these two countries was even more exciting than he had imagined. Without this layer of worry, even if Jiang Ji didn't say anything, Qiguan Rang also wanted to petition for troops. But sending troops was one thing, timing was very important. A few months earlier and a few months later could result in a world of difference. Qiguan Rang didn't understand why Jiang Ji was in such a hurry to start the war. But he was loyal to Jiang. As long as the other party's orders weren't outrageous and reasonable, he wouldn't question them. Qiguan Rang held the letter and discussed with Sun Wen through the night, thinking about the possibility of taking over half of Zhongzhao within the stipulated time. Old Master Sun said solemnly, "Why don't we write a letter to the Lord and ask for forgiveness for a month?" It was not impossible to take down half of the Zhongzhao in such a short period of time, but it would be risky. They still had ample military supplies, so they could take the risk. It would be good if they could gain a firm foothold, but if they couldn't, I'm afraid our army wouldn't have the strength to attack this year. The punitive expedition against Zhongzhao has to be postponed to next year's autumn harvest. My lord shouldn't be aware of this. Although Old Man Sun was not a stickler to the rules and often used tricks on the battlefield, when it came to the big picture, he preferred to fight steadily and surely. Zhongzhao was already in the bag. They could drag it out until the autumn harvest before sending troops to attack. Zhongzhao had been burdened by frequent wars in the past few years. In the past 2 years there had been full-scale wars. Their crops could not keep up with their consumption. Starting the war in autumn was when the enemy was at their most ferocious. All the feudal vassals were short of food, so why would they go all out to fight for food? If Qiguan Rang and the others sent out their troops at this time, they could fight while dragging the battle on. They would definitely win. If they sent out their troops now, they had to take some risks. Qiguan Rang understood this as well, but he knew Jiang Qin better. Ji needed this victory. Even if the other party didn't say what they needed this victory for as a subject, he had to achieve it for the other party. Qiguan Rang's attitude was firm and Old Man Sun compromised. The two of them planned for several days and finally found a breakthrough. Old Man Sun watched Qiguan Rang not sleep for several nights and had an absurd thought. Could it be that Qiguan Rang had feelings for his lord that surpassed that of a ruler and subject? Old Man Sun asked in private, but Qiguan Rang flatly denied it. Don't talk nonsense. It's impossible. Old Man Sun was speechless. Old Man Sun was experienced and knowledgeable. He didn't believe that there was such a pure friendship between a man and a woman. The facts proved that there was. Jiang? Wasn't Ji and Qiguan Rang enough? Or should he say Jiang? Other than Ji and Wei Ci, the feelings of all men were so pure. Under your smiley face, angle, Understood they didn't treat Jiang Qin as a woman at all. Ji Dexiang was a woman and he was a straight man, so he was naturally a close friend. Qiguan Rang hadn't slept much for a few days, but he was even more energetic. He was high as if he was on steroids. I have a feeling that something good will happen if we take over half of Zhongzhou. His lord didn't fight a battle unprepared. She suddenly asked Qiguan Rang to send troops to Zhongzhou. There must be a reason. Sun Wen was speechless. Old man Sun felt that taking over half of Zhongzhou was a great thing. What could be better than this? Beiyuan and Xichang surrendered to them? Unifying the 5 countries in minutes? After guessing for half the night, old man Sun yawned and went to catch up on his sleep. He left the tactical arrangements and mobilization of troops to Qiguan Rang. I'm old, I don't have much energy. Old man Sun stretched his back and looked in the direction of Zhongzhou, deep in thought. He had dreamed of his homeland countless times and had thought of 10,000 ways to take revenge on the enemy. When this goal was about to be achieved, the old man didn't feel the joy he had imagined. Instead, he felt empty. It wasn't the emptiness of being disappointed, but the emptiness after feeling refreshed. Smiley face, angle. Under the careful planning, the civil and military officials cooperated well. The chess pieces that had been planted were put to use one by one. Zhongzhou was like a domino that had collapsed. They looked strong, but when they encountered an enemy that was closing in on them, not only did they fail to defend their position, but they were also completely annihilated. In just 21 days of the 33 counties in Zhongzhou, 4 prefectures and 16 counties fell. A few days before conquering the 4th prefecture, Qiguan Rang sent a messenger to Jiangxiang. Ji Yunshu used the highest grade black emblem to send the battle report. Half of the Zhongzhou had fallen into his hands, and the first palace examination had entered its final phase. This palace examination would be called the Fight of the Immortals in later generations. More than half of the scholars were the cornerstones of the 2nd generation after the founding of the Jiang dynasty. They played the role of connecting the preceding and the following and creating a prosperous era. At the same time, this court examination created a record that would never be seen again. The same person was hit 4 times in a row. In later generations, the highest score in the imperial examinations was 3 yuan in a row, but this year there was someone who passed 4 yuan in a row. In the end, the top scorer was still the girl from the Golden Scale Academy. The last question was domineering and intimidating. Feng Yi, one of the favorites to win the championship, was also suppressed by her. That was why she did not lose, but she lost in terms of momentum. In the end, Ji Yunshu named the girl as the top scorer. In the previous few rounds, this person's score had always dominated the first place. In addition to the top scorer in the graduation examination of the Golden Scale Academy, she was jokingly called the only one to pass 4 yuan in a row. Feng Yi was not the 3rd flower this time. He had risen to the position of the 2nd rank. The original 2nd rank did not perform well and was ranked 6th. To be able to obtain so many talents in this imperial examination is the greatest blessing in life. According to the procedure, after a few words, it was time to go home and find their mothers, wash up, sleep and prepare for the Qianglin banquet the next day. Chapter 1798. The 5 countries will unite and Ziwei will descend from the heavens. These words reverberated in everyone's hearts and did not subside for a long time. Congratulations to the Lord for obtaining a talent. Congratulations to the Lord for obtaining Zhongzhou. Congratulations to the Lord for having a successor. An older official stepped out. He was so excited that his hands were trembling and his eyes were filled with tears. People of his age had suffered the most. The chaotic world had tortured them for too long. He had thought that he would never see peace again. He never expected to hear such good news. The 5 countries will unite and Ziwei will descend from the heavens. The heavens are finally taking pity on the people. Jiang? Ji said, all of you are pillars of the country. With all of you here, why worry that prosperity will not come? The heavens have listened to your wishes and have sent the incarnation of Ziwei into my womb. Half of Zhongzhou is in our hands. Xichang and Beiyuan are obsessed with internal strife and wasting the country's power. There is nothing to fear. Half of the 5 countries were in her hands. The rest were weak and unbeatable. If not her, who would unite the country in the future? Even the heavens had recognized her and had specially sent the incarnation of Ziwei into her womb to create an even more prosperous dynasty. In this way, who would be able to compete with her? Those who did not know the truth were fooled by her words and believed in everything she said. If it was not the will of the heavens, how could everything be so coincidental? Zhongzhou had always held strong. Before this there was no such news. There was not even a rumor of war. They only heard that the feudal lords of Zhongzhou were enraged. The troops stationed at Zhanjiang Pass did not move and did not intervene in the internal struggles of Zhongzhou. Without any warning, on the day of the court examinations top 3, news of a great victory came from the front lines. The most mysterious thing was that the unmarried lord, who had been quiet and had a clean private life, was suddenly pregnant. It was discovered that the day before she was pregnant, she dreamed of a dragon and phoenix in her womb. One by one, it was not a big deal. But when 3 good things happened on the same day, it was not as simple as 1 + 1 + 1 is equal to 3. Did they not see that everyone was so happy they forgot their manners? Did they not see that the older officials were crying on the spot? Jiang Ji was still not pregnant. How many people were worried about her? Now the heavens couldn't stand it anymore and sent a purple star. What did this prove? This proved that the Lord they followed was the Son of Heaven. The next emperor would also be a wise ruler. The prosperity and peace would last for at least 100 years. Those who had not experienced the tumultuous times would never be able to understand that kind of suffering and their longing for peace. Now they no longer needed to look for plum blossoms to quench their thirst. Peace and prosperity were waiting for them at their fingertips. Everyone bowed and congratulated him, and their voices were resounding to the point it shot into the ceiling of the hall and wished for nothing more than to charge into the clouds. He was still saying Lord, but in his heart he was calling His Majesty. She was the Son of Heaven. Even though she had yet to ascend to the throne, she was already a supreme ruler in everyone's hearts. In comparison, the reactions of a few insiders were more thought-provoking. Feng Zhen secretly winked at Wei Xi, asking him when he got pregnant. He wanted to know if Wei Xi was cuckolded. According to his estimation, his lord and Wei Xi had been together for a long time. She was only pregnant now. This timing was very sensitive. Ask Wei Xi? He was also a hen. Ginger? Ji announced the last piece of news in front of everyone. Wei Xi's confusion and shock were no less than the others. He was also kept in the dark, but Wei Xi didn't feel the slightest bit sad. Thinking of Ji's attention to the situation in Zhongzhou, Wei Xi knew that today's result was something she had planned for a long time. It was to build momentum for herself and the child in her womb at the same time. With such painstaking efforts, what right did Wei Xi have to be unreasonable and complain about her concealment? He wasn't the slightest bit dissatisfied, only full of excitement and tenderness. Wei Xi could finally fulfill the vow he made when he was reborn, to accompany her and watch her ascend to the throne of supremacy. He also knew that this child couldn't be Jiang Yan. Jiang? Ji had always thought that Wei Xi would mind this and was worried that he would be stuck in the quagmire of the past. She didn't know that Wei Xi wasn't that fragile. He deeply loved the pair of children from his previous life and was filled with guilt towards them. Even in his dreams he thought about how to make up for what he owed them. However, this life was different from his previous life. If he was obsessed with his previous life, how unfair would he be to his lord and future children? In Wei Xi's heart, Jiang Yan would forever be his eldest daughter, and Wei Tsong would forever be his son. The newborn child would be the third. He or she was unique, not someone's substitute or shadow. Jiang? Ji seemed to feel something. Her resolute eyes swept over him and immediately softened. What happened in the main hall today spread at an incredible speed. Some officials who scrupulously abided by their duties and didn't attend the court examination were so shocked that their jaws dropped. Wanzhou was in a state of celebration. Is what you said true? Bai Yuexia, who had just given birth, grabbed the maid's wrist with all her might, almost scaring her precious baby into tears. The maid endured the pain, but the joy on her face came from the bottom of her heart. First Lady, it's true, it's really true. Bai Yuexia lifted the blanket and hurriedly said, quickly wash me up and put on makeup. I'm going to congratulate my lord. The maid and the wet nurse were shocked and hurriedly pulled Bai Yuexia back to prevent her from running out and catching a cold. Women had to go into confinement after giving birth. If they didn't take good care of her, she would suffer from confinement sickness. She would suffer when she got older. Bai Yuexia didn't believe this. She was in good health now. If Zhang Ping hadn't stopped her and her father had written a letter to her asking her to pay attention to her confinement recovery, she wouldn't have obediently stayed in bed. The weather was too stuffy now. Bai Yuexia hadn't left the house since giving birth. She hadn't washed her hair or taken a bath. Her bed was smelly. Most of the confinement has passed. My body has long since recovered. Don't worry about it. Bai Yuexia's heart was as hard as iron. She didn't listen to advice at all. She did things in a hurry and couldn't be stopped. Quickly prepare hot water. I want to wash up. I can't let my lord smell something strange. How could she not go and congratulate her on such a joyous occasion? She hadn't noticed it before, but now she felt that everything smelled bad. Her hair was itchy, and her pajamas had turned into yellow dried vegetables. The maids and old women couldn't stop her. Zhang Ping, the only person who had some authority, wasn't here, so they could only do as she said with bitter faces. When Zhang Ping stepped through the door, Bai Yuexia's foot bumped into him. Zhang Ping was speechless. Did the news spread so fast? Not only did Bai Yuexia know about it, but the commander of the troops stationed outside Xiangyang district also knew about it. Jiang Nongqin confirmed with the messenger 3 times in a row before she dared to believe the good news she heard. The 5 countries will unite, and the heavens will send Ziwei, Jiang Nongqin murmured several times. As she spoke, her eyes were filled with tears. She was so lucky to have the opportunity to see her lord rule the world in her lifetime. Jiang Nongqin had followed her since she was still a noble scholar in Hejin County. She was the one who pulled Jiang Nongqin out of the swamp of despair and taught her how to create her own life step by step. She hadn't reached the pinnacle yet, but the joy of the 3 joyous events was no less than that of reaching the pinnacle. Chapter 1799. This is what it means to have the outcome set in stone. Huang Song sat on the porch and watched his son and daughter study. With his beloved wife by his side, he could be considered a winner in life. The warm family time was ruined by Jiang Ji's news broke. Huang Song was stunned for a while, and then a relieved smile appeared on his face. He raised his hand to rub his youngest daughter's hair and murmured, "Time really flies. Madam, in another 10 years our generation will be old, and the world will belong to the next generation of young people." Chi Chaolan raised her hand to cover Huang Song's hand and playfully played with his fingers. "It's been more than 10 years. There's still a long way to go. Are you admitting to being old already?" Huang Song said, "You have to admit that you're getting old. The iron tree that hasn't blossomed or borne fruit for 10,000 years is now bearing fruit. With such a mother and such a prestigious background, your future is destined to be extraordinary. Your husband, would like to see time pass a little faster and see what young people are capable of." Follow Jiang Ji's footsteps to unify the world were nearing, and Huang Song and the others were slowly withdrawing from the stage. Hearing the loneliness in her husband's voice, Chi Chaolan couldn't help but stroke his shoulder to comfort him. "Langjun, don't blame me for that." If Chi Chaolan had not used herself and their child to persuade Huang Song to stay, Huang Song would probably have committed suicide in that battle. To him, dying before he was defeated was not necessarily a bad thing. If that was the case, they wouldn't have to remember that they were losers for years and years. The winner would walk further and further away from them. If Huang Song did not live well, Chi Chaolan would also feel guilty. Huang Song said, "What nonsense are you spouting? How could your husband be so narrow-minded?" In the beginning it was indeed inconvenient. For example, when he went to the Golden Scale Academy to pick up his wife and children, he was stopped by the gatekeeper. If he was still a duke, who would dare to stop him? However, after so many years, Huang Song had gotten used to it and thought things through. Everyone had their own ambitions. Staying with his wife and children might not necessarily lead a blissful life. Ascending to the 9 heavens might not necessarily lead a smooth journey. It was lonely at the top. Once a person's position changed, changes would follow. He only hoped that his young friend could still maintain his original intentions after he became a 9-5, and that everything around him would not change with the change of his identity. If he really wanted to talk about guilt, "Your husband feels a little guilty towards Madam," Huang Song said abruptly, causing Chi Chaolan to look at him in confusion. He smiled. "Back then, Meng Zhan wanted to adopt a girl from the same clan as his daughter and give her to me as a concubine. Madam, do you remember what you said?" Chi Chaolan had an awkward expression. She covered her sleeves and smiled. "It's been so many years. How can I still remember?" Huang Song said, "Madam has forgotten, but your husband still remembers." At that time, Chi Chaolan had threatened Huang Song with a dagger. If Huang Song dared to take a concubine, she would dare to divorce him and keep a handsome man. At that time, Chi Chaolan's aura had soared to 2.8 meters. Huang Song was so scared that he almost knelt down. "What you Huang Bogeo can do, I Chi Chaolan can't? Lu, she was able to become a marquis as a woman, and I have 3,000 elites under my command. Can't I do the same and start from scratch? When the time comes when I become a feudal lord, why can't I have 3 husbands and 4 attendants? Huang Bogeo, I have the support of my maternal brothers and I have a famous master. I have learned the art of war from my father since I was a child. If it were not for the limitation of being a woman, I would have joined the army by now. Do you really think that I am a housewife who guards her own backyard? Do you think I can or can't do it? Every word was vivid in her ears. Now that she thought about it, it was indeed Huang Song who had held her back. She had the ability, but she did not have the opportunity to see the wider world. She was confined to the backyard to guard her own backyard. Marrying him was probably the worst decision Chi Chaolan had ever made in her life. However, Huang Song was still grateful that Chi Chaolan had caught a glimpse of him back then. From then on, she fell in love with him and insisted on marrying him. Speaking of which, Huang Song asked Chi Chaolan, "Madam, do you think your husband is as handsome as before?" Chi Chaolan raised her eyebrows and asked, "What do you think, Lang Jun?" His face was twice the size of a young man, and his double chin was showing. Thinking about how Huang Song was already in his 30s, it was common for middle-aged men to put on weight. Chi Chaolan did not despise him. Huang Song took a deep breath. His belly had yet to shrink and he suddenly felt depressed. He still did not believe the words of those famous men. What did they say about being plump and fat being beautiful? It was all nonsense. I'm already middle-aged and I still have to worry about whether my old face will be despised by my old wife. Sigh. Huang Song made up his mind to lose weight, and invited his friend, Feng Ju, to join a middle-aged fitness group. Feng Ju rejected him. He was as handsome as before and the older he got, the more charming he became. Did he still need to lose weight? Huang Song clutched his wounded little heart and left. Feng Ju looked at the deserted courtyard, and his eyes flashed a little absent-mindedly. For some reason, while the people outside were celebrating and walking the streets to share their joy, he felt an indescribable loneliness. Madame Feng Ju said gently, "Langjun, why are you standing in the corridor? The sky is getting dark and the courtyard is very humid." "I'm thinking about something, but I can't figure it out no matter how hard I try." Madame said, "Then leave it for tomorrow to think about." Feng Ju asked her, "What if you can't figure it out tomorrow and never in the future?" Madame said, "Then don't think about it. It's destined that you won't be able to figure it out. Why waste time? Isn't it better to cherish the moment?" These words made Feng Ju feel enlightened, as if the fog in front of him had completely dissipated. "Yes, Madame is still the most thorough." "Madame?" When the news came, Lu Shi and Lu Zhao were drinking tea in the corridor. Those attending the court examination that day were all important officials. Lu Shi and Lu Zhao, one retired and the other was a commoner. Neither of them could be present. Lu Zhao heaved a sigh of relief. "Sister finally has a child. Our son is safe." Lu Shi took a sip of tea and said, "Safe? Not necessarily." Lu Zhao was almost choked to death by his own father. What? How could it still be dangerous? Why was it so difficult for him to keep his life? Lu Shi looked at the splendid scene in the courtyard. His dark eyes seemed to be shrouded in a thick fog and no one could see through his heart. The only person who could do it was long gone. Lu Shi said abruptly, "The wind is about to blow. The weather is about to change. The weather is about to change." Lu Zhao looked at the sky and said in surprise, "The sky is quite normal and there was no mention of strong wind, heavy rain or fog tonight." As he murmured, he suddenly stopped. The wind, the weather, was it the sky above their heads or, "Father?" Lu Zhao suddenly put down the teacup. The sound of it clattering was particularly clear at this moment. Lu Shi got up from the mat and said faintly, "No matter who wins or loses, don't get involved. When gods fight, they don't care about family." Lu Zhao's chest was beating violently, and an ominous premonition spread throughout his body. "Father, are you going to deal with sister?" Lu Zhao clenched his fists. Lu Shi suddenly laughed out loud. "Why would I? I'm just like you watching the fight between the gods." Chapter 1800. "Father, you have to remind my sister." Lu Zhao looked into Lu Shi's deep eyes and stammered. His voice gradually trailed off. No matter how slow he was, he knew he had said something he shouldn't have, not to mention that Lu Zhao wasn't stupid at all. Lu Shi's deep eyes fell on his son and he asked him in a relaxed tone, as if he was asking about the weather, "Remind what?" "Remind that my sister might be in danger. After all, she's been very kind to us all these years." Before he could finish his sentence, Lu Zhao noticed that his father's eyes had become particularly scary, giving him an unusual amount of pressure. Lu Zhao didn't expect his father to have such a dangerous side. On second thought, if Lu Shi was really an ordinary scholar, he wouldn't have been able to suppress the local bullies in Hu County, let alone become famous in Dongqing. Lu Shi was still ruthless, but he had been cultivating himself and had been hiding it well. People gradually forgot that he used to be a ruthless person that everyone was afraid of. In the face of such a strong pressure, Lu Xiao's eyes revealed an indescribable complexity. Being neutral can still benefit from both sides, but once you choose a side it'll be fine if you win, but it'll be beyond redemption if you lose. Lu Shi withdrew his aura and returned to normal, as if his earlier aura was just a hallucination. Won't my sister blame me? Lu Shi thought of Jiang Ji. Ji sneered, she knows what she's doing. The system was a gloomy guy planning before taking action. Other than being stupid when it was sliced, it was still very good at other things. Even if Lu Shi hated the system to death, he knew that the system was cunning and wouldn't fail so easily. As long as it didn't kill the system, it would always come back and its revenge would be even more ruthless than before. Jiang Ji wasn't afraid of the system but not the people she cared about. When Wei Ci was possessed by the system and committed suicide, didn't he almost die? Now not only was there Wei Ci, but there was also an unborn child. The baby was even more fragile than Wei Ci. But Ji had to protect them. The worst decision your sister has ever made is probably to get pregnant at this time. The more weaknesses she has, the easier it is for the enemy to deal with her. Lu Shi sighed, once Wei Ci or the child falls into the enemy's hands. What do you think she'll do? Maybe she shouldn't have tried to harm Wei Ci in the first place and let the system know her weakness. Lu Xiao was speechless. Father, it seems like you were the one who asked your son to hasten his growth. Now he was criticizing her for getting pregnant too quickly and at the wrong time. This was too double standard. Lu Shi sneered. Do you think she made up her mind to have a child because of you? He has already made his decision. It has nothing to do with you. What was this kid thinking? Did he really think he was Jiang? Ji is very influential? Lu Xiao. He was probably her biological father. But Lu Shi changed the topic. It's hard to say if this isn't her plan to lure the snake out of its hole. It was just a simple sentence, but Lu Xiao felt a chill run down his spine. To lure a snake out of its hole, there must be a bait to attract the snake. If it was really intentional, then wasn't she using her weakness as bait? Lu Shi sneered and said, you're not hopelessly stupid. She did treat you well, but no matter how good she is still a bad woman. Did they not see Gu Zhen in the backyard? Gu Zhen had stepped on her bottom line. She destroyed her feelings and tore apart the facade of warmth that had existed for many years without a second word. In the eyes of outsiders, she did not treat Gu Zhen badly at all, and it was indeed so. She was a filial daughter all these years. She's too nice. She's so nice that Gu Zhen has forgotten her identity and hers. She really thought there was a mother-daughter relationship between the two of them. Had Gu Zhen never thought about the consequences of failure? She had thought about it, but she was too confident that nothing bad would happen to her even if she was caught. Even if her deeds were exposed, she would still be the future Empress Dowager. Ji wouldn't really deal with her. Based on this foundation, Gu Zhen had the courage to take risks time and time again. In the end, Jiang Xiang was Ji had set up a counterattack. Lu Shi said, remember she is Jiang? Ji was not Lu Shi. She can treat you like a younger brother, but there is no real brotherly love between you. From this point of view, Lu Shi and Jiang Qinghe were in the same boat. Ji was the same kind of person. No matter how loving and filial the two of them were, outsiders were moved by their atmosphere, but their minds were still clear, and they were not corrupted by the so-called feelings. Gu Min was the only person in Lu Shi's life who had been bewitched and willingly fallen for it. Lu Shi understood Jiang? With Ji's personality, he would remind his stupid son. His mind was clear and he would always remember this iron rule. Lu Shi smiled evilly. Do you believe that if you can be the bait to lure the snake out of its hole, she will push you out? Lu Xiao was speechless. Of course she would. But, sister is not a cold-hearted person. If she did this, she would definitely have a thorough plan. She wouldn't really let the bait enter the snake's stomach. Lu Shi sighed. Of course. Otherwise, wouldn't she be the one who lost? It was understandable rationally, but it was unacceptable emotionally. This was the situation. Regardless of who Jiang was? Who was the bait that Ji had pushed out? When the bait found out the truth, it would be hard to accept. Lu Xiao said, maybe, we're thinking too much? Lu Shi snorted and didn't answer. Thinking too much? No, he would only think that he was thinking too little. Jiang? Ji had fought with the system so many times and even had the upper hand. He should have known that this woman was not a good person. Lu Shi didn't believe that there was no consideration of luring the snake out of its hole during this pregnancy. Let's wait and see. Once they have a winner, we'll have peace. Lucy sneered. You don't have to worry about your sister. Her life will not be in danger. As for you, the only person I'm worried about now is you. I'm afraid you won't be able to die in peace. Whether the system won or Jiang. Ji Xingli, Lucy couldn't live without the feelings of the system. No matter how much the system despised him, it still needed to absorb him to increase its strength. Jiang? Needless to say, Ji now had a human body, but he could faintly sense that Jiang? The knife at Ji's waist was very scary. It didn't matter to Lu Shi who won or lost. Sigh, when the gods fight, the mortals suffer. Lu Shi felt that he could still save them. At the same time, Jiang? Ji sneezed several times in a row. She rubbed her nose and said, "That B** starred is talking behind my back?" She sneezed one after another and couldn't stop. If this continued, she wouldn't be able to hold in her pee. Wei Ci said faintly, "Now that the master has made such a fuss, how could there be fewer people talking behind your back?" Due to the backward communication in this era, Jiang? Ji would definitely dominate the hot search list. It was guaranteed that the 1st to the 50th would be related to her. He wasn't the first person to know the good news. Chapter 1801. Ginger? Ji said, "There must be more good words outside. I sneezed so much." A yawn. "They must be saying bad things about me." Wei Ci. He wanted to say that with his lord's ability to attract hatred, she would probably say half of the good and half of the bad. Didn't she have any idea what was going on? Countless gentry families that had been suppressed by her secretly cursed her bad luck. However, her marketing skills were outstanding. Not only did she give herself the title of the Child of Destiny, she even gave the child in her womb the title of the reincarnation of the North Star. Once the child was born, no matter how many more children they had in the future, they would not be able to defeat this one. The halo was too powerful. Not to mention fighting for it, they probably couldn't even think of fighting for it. But, will it be bad for the child if he's too famous? Wei Ci was afraid that he would carelessly praise the child to death while raising her. Moreover, the one who would be praised to death was his own mother. That would be a pain in the ass. Ginger? Ji twirled the toothpick and bared her teeth. What's wrong with it? Children should be cool. Otherwise, why would I call you my child? Wei Ci, if the child were to die from excessive praise, the mother would be the main culprit. After all, everything is unpredictable. Just like Wei Tsong in his previous life, Wei Ci did not want this child. To be precise, he did not expect to have this child. It would be fine if it was a girl, but if it was a boy, not only would it shake Her Highness Jiang Yan's legitimate status, but it would also threaten His Majesty's life. The situation in the court could not tolerate such a legitimate son. When he found out that this child was specially born by Her Majesty to continue the Wei family's lineage, Wei Ci's emotions were so complicated that he could not be sorted out. Of course, the child could not be ruled out as Her Majesty's entrapment, but half of it was planned for Wei Ci. With this thought in mind, Wei Ci felt that it was a great gift from the heavens and did not dare to ask for anything else. He wanted to raise Wei Tsong well. Other than status and honor, Wei Ci had done everything he could. She hoped that he would spend the rest of his life as a famous scholar, doing what he wanted to do and traveling around the world. They didn't have to endure the pain of separation in a chaotic world, and they didn't have to endure the predicament of hunger and cold. Life was like floating clouds, free and unrestrained. Now that he thought about it, Wei Ci had been too subjective and had forgotten that Wei Tsong was not him. What he gave the child might not be what the child wanted. Now, my lord, in this life, I only want this one. The second one was destined to be the threat of boss. Incense offerings and whatnot could go to hell. In his previous life, Wei Ci did not cling to the family line. Otherwise, he would not have been targeted by Her Majesty when he was still single at the age of 30, right? With such a damned fate that cursed his entire family, he would have long laid flat and let fate trample all over him. If another Wei Tsong appeared, they would still end up with the same outcome. Ginger? After Ji Yunshu finished picking her teeth, she told him some bad news. This is a twin. You can't just have one. Wei Ci was speechless. Ginger? Ji said, didn't I say that the dragon and phoenix in my dreams entered my arms? No matter if the dragon and phoenix were male or female, there would definitely be two. Wei Ci said with difficulty, dragon and phoenix entering one's bosom. Isn't that just nonsense, my lord? There was no such dream. Ginger? Ji Yunshu nodded. The dream is nonsense, but the essence is real. Wei Ci was confused again. Since ancient times, there has never been a twin who inherited the throne. They looked exactly the same. What a good basic condition for usurping the throne. If they encountered a damned emperor or prince who swapped identities, wouldn't the imperial court and imperial harem be in a mess? If one was a dragon and one was a phoenix, it would be a good omen. What if the two children were of the same gender? There were similar records in the past. When an imperial concubine gave birth to twin dragons, one would drown. Otherwise, both would lose the right to inherit the throne. Ginger? Ji said indifferently, then let's set an example with these two children. The old chief had to take a fancy to a small farm or something. It was a dream to expect a woman who ran around the world to stay in a strange and backward ancient world for the rest of her life. It was impossible to fight for the throne. Ji Yunshu was afraid that the old chief would tie her daughter up and tie her to the dragon throne to threaten her. Unders her smiley face, angle. Unders ever since she deduced that the old chief might come. Ginger? Ji Yunshu secretly made a plan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was rare to be able to exploit this fellow. If she didn't take the opportunity to take advantage of him, she was afraid that she wouldn't have another chance in the future. Thinking that her daughter would have to live under the shadow of the great devil in the future. Ginger? Ji Yunshu pitied this child. Wei Si said, but, Ginger? Ji Yunshu stroked her belly and said, don't worry. We have to believe in miracles. Wei Si, not at all. Unders your smiley faced, angle. Unders be Ginger? When Ji Yunshu's news reached the troops stationed in Nanxing and Zhongzhao's front line, everyone had different reactions. Fu Wang was calm. Jiang? Ji Yunshu was unmarried and had no children. This commander had never joined the army to hasten births. He only recognized this one lord. The baby young lord was nothing. It didn't matter whether he had or not. When Yang Si received the news, he was bathing in the bathtub. In his excitement, he knocked over the bathtub. When he got up from the ground, he opened the door and ordered the butler to prepare food and wine to celebrate. The butler looked at the fair and smooth old master. His expression was indescribable. What kind of look is that? Your old master is still strong. Yang Si slammed the door, blocking the old butler's line of sight. The old butler. He couldn't help but ask a question from the depths of his soul. What was in the old master's head all day? Yang Tao, Yen Lin and the others were slightly shocked, but their reactions were still calm. Is the news reliable? Yang Tao had been busy training the troops all day. He was so tired that he was sweating all over. He didn't even bother to take off his armor. The smell was so strong that only his wife and good friend Yen Lin didn't mind. He sat cross-legged and massaged his sore feet. Yen Lin said, reliable. The news was sent by Qian Su, who had escorted his wife and children to Wanzhou. How could it not be reliable? Yang Tao accidentally popped his blister. The pain made him grimace, but he felt good afterward. Isn't that a good thing? With a young lord, the people will feel at ease. Otherwise, her position will be shaken sooner or later. Yen Lin glanced at his good friend who was getting more and more impolite. He said coldly, you're quite open-minded. Yang Tao said, what else can I do? Betray her? Yen Lin. He pressed down on the blue veins on his forehead. Jingza, don't get too close to those boorish country bumpkins. Listen to Yang Tao's elegant words. What kind of accent is that? For Yen Lin, who was fastidious about pronunciation and had terminal OCD, this was torture. If this went on, their friendship would be over. Among the crowd, only Qiguan Rang had the most unusual reaction. He ran to the tower with a few jars of wine and drank for the whole night. Drunk, he was carried down and huddled in his bed in the middle of the night. The next day, when Qiguan Rang recalled how drunk he was, he looked a little hopeless. Old Master Sun didn't expose him. He asked, did you get what you wanted? Qiguan Rang, who had always been gloomy and cold, smiled. Not yet. Not yet? Qiguan Rang said, the world hasn't been unified yet. It's not perfect. The world had been unified. She hadn't ascended to the throne yet. It wasn't perfect. After ascending to the throne, the golden age hadn't arrived yet. Chapter 1802. This year was of great significance. It was destined to be recorded in the annals of history and leave a strong mark in the long river of history. Whether it was Jiang Ji's feeling of pregnancy, the purple star from heaven, the loss of half of Zhongzhao in more than 20 days, or the successful completion of the first imperial examination, this batch of scholars officially entered the official career. In a sense, it could almost be regarded as the beginning of a new era. Later generations could peek at a part of this special era from the history books, but those who lived in this era experienced everything firsthand. Brother Rongli, I really can't bear to part with you. Tenli Pavilion outside the city, Changxing was not shy at all as she wrapped her arms around Feng Yi's neck. Her eyes were rippling with reluctance. I still don't understand why Lord Jiang sent you so far away. What's the difference from being sent to the border? Feng Yi raised her hand to steady Changxing's waist. Her hand was almost scalded by the touch of her waist. Nonsense. You're so shameless in broad daylight. Although it was a scolding, her tone was gentle and doting. Her lips were curled into a faint warm smile. How am I shameless? We are a legitimate fiancé. There are many Boulder Langjun and his wife in Wanzhou. Why can't I hug you? Changxing wanted to hang on to him. Feng Yi was the top scorer of this imperial examination, but she was sent to the extremely distant border. How could the conditions there compare to Wanzhou? In other times, this would be the place where the demoted officials would be sent to. Thinking of this, Changxing was even sadder. She didn't know how Feng Yi would be tempered by the border environment after her 4-year term. Feng Yi smiled. Lord Jiang naturally has her considerations for making such arrangements. Now that the world is settled, the people on this vast land are her people. Didn't she nurture the students of the Golden Scale Academy for so many years so that we can benefit the people of the world? There's no reason for Wanzhou to be prosperous while the people of other states and counties suffer. Lord Jiang sent us there to let the people of those places live a good life. Changxing said, You speak a lot of great principles, but you don't know how many people are watching. Feng Yi smiled faintly as she recalled Jiang Fei. She recalled the scene of Jiang Ji summoning batch after batch of scholars. She spoke earnestly of her plans. The more outstanding the students, the more impoverished and suffering they would be sent to for a 4-year term. If they could endure the hardships and benefit the local people, it would not be difficult for them to be promoted in the future, and their official careers would also be smooth. If they didn't want to or had a reason to stay away, they could also find a job nearby, but the position would definitely not be high. After all, the positions in Wanzhou were basically saturated, and there weren't many high-ranking positions in the neighboring prosperous prefectures and counties. Even if there were good positions, it would not be given to newcomers like them who had just entered their official careers. This year's top scholar, Lu Zhou, took the initiative to choose a remote place. That place was next to Feng Yi and it was even more barren. Don't you feel wronged? Perhaps it was because she was pregnant, but Lord Jiang was very patient that day. His words were also very gentle. Lu Zhou said, Mr. Jiang has spent a lot of money to cultivate me. You have spent more than 10 years of effort. A drop of water should be returned with a spring of water. If Lord Jiang needs it, this lowly official will go. Moreover, I have been taught by the headmaster of the academy for many years. I am always worried about the people and always look forward to doing my bit for them. Now that he was fortunate enough to help the people at the border, what grievances did he have? This lowly official entered officialdom to assist Lord Jiang and benefit the people. The people in prosperous places do not need an inexperienced newcomer like me to cause trouble, but the people at the border do. This involved a problem of pursuit. If entering officialdom was to pursue fame and fortune, it was naturally best to stay in a prosperous place, where they would suffer less and earn more. At the same time, because they were newcomers, there was little room for them to play, and they would be buried for no reason. If entering officialdom was to benefit the people and share the burden of the king, where would they go if they didn't go to be an official where they were needed? Lu Zhou didn't think Jiang Ji's arrangement was to send them away. Don't doubt it, she was such a brainless fan. Which girl from the female class didn't like Lord Jiang? After Lu Zhou said everything, the expressions of the other people in the same department were a little subtle. Some people were willing to be transferred to other places to shine, while others, after hesitating, wanted to stay closer because of their parents, health, and other reasons. Everyone had their own aspirations and they couldn't be forced. Jiang Ji also knew how desolate and difficult those places were, so she assigned each of them with guards and a special channel to submit letters. Their letters would be delivered to Jiang as soon as possible. On Ji's desk. Go ahead and do it. As long as it is beneficial to the people in the country, I will support it. Jiang Ji hesitated for a moment, then added a sentence. No matter what kind of stinky power you are facing, remember, the person standing behind you is me. Feng Yi collected his thoughts and smiled. If they want to watch the show, then so be it. How can the sparrows know the ambitions of the great? Changxing smiled. Yeah, they are a bunch of sparrows with no vision. No wonder Lord Jiang taught them a lesson over and over again. Feng Yi hesitated for a moment, then hugged her waist and pulled her into his arms. 4 years later, I will come back and marry you. Changxing said, 4 years, it just so happens that I have graduated from the academy. Maybe I will look for you first. Time always passed very quickly and it was time to set out on the road. Chang Xing hugged his waist and said angrily, "You are not allowed to flirt when you are an official. Not women, not men." "Yes, it's yours," Feng Yi comforted her. "Study hard in the academy, don't neglect your studies." Chang Xing said, "Just watch, the next top scholar will be me." Feng Yi hugged her for the last time, turned over and got on the horse. He waved the horsewhip and went on the official road. Realizing that Chang Xing's gaze was still on him, Feng Yi waved the horsewhip hard. The breeze blew his sleeves, leaving the brightest color in the most beautiful age. Similar scenes were happening everywhere. This group of scholars went to a remote place to be an official without a word of complaint. Among them, the majority were students from the Golden Scale Academy. Those who secretly mocked them felt bored and gradually shut their mouths. In many people's eyes, going to a remote place to be an official was demeaning. How many officials in the previous dynasty died on the way to being demoted? These young and vigorous scholars ignored this point and resolutely went on their way, which made many people sigh. If someone paid attention, they would most likely find that these scholars were mostly from humble families. When these scholars return, the gentry will have a headache. Jiang? It was not scary that the important officials around Ji were from humble families. What was scary was that most of the middle and lower levels were from humble families. When the Jiang dynasty was established, the humble families would not be at a disadvantage in the fight between the gentry and the commoners. It would most likely maintain a stable situation. Master Yuanjing was pleased that his students had such a high level of understanding. Of course, this did not exclude Jiang. Ji's words, "The person standing behind you is me," were too passionate. It made these young people's blood boil. The great scholar Wan Xian had aged a lot these years, but his spirit, qi and spirit were more vigorous than before. Chapter 1803. Grass Snake Gray Line, thousands of miles long. It seemed like a bold move, but it actually contained deep meaning and concerns. When she founded the Golden Scale Pavilion and the Golden Scale Academy, she did it under the pressure of the aristocrats. Everyone thought that she only wanted to promote the poor. Although the aristocrats were angry, they did not realize the current situation. Who would have thought that one after another, in the end, everything would be linked to each other and everyone would be trapped? Of course, this method also required charisma. Jiang? Ji undoubtedly had this quality. If I can see these children bring a different kind of vitality to the world in my lifetime, I will have no regrets in this life. Yuanjing did not teach his students how to pursue fame and fortune. In the end, it was all about one word: people. Benefiting the people, not for their own selfish desires. It was just that it was too difficult to achieve this. People's selfish desires could not be controlled by external forces. What Master Yuanjing could do was to try his best to instill his own ideas in his students and set an example. He had taught for many years and never became an official. It was also because of his unique stubbornness and perseverance. Wan Xian laughed and said, "I still have a long life. These people were all strong. It would not be a problem to work hard for another 20 to 30 years. What, have no regrets in this life? There was only hope when one was alive." Wan Xian fled Zhongzhou in a sorry state. Now half of Zhongzhou was in Jiang. Ji's hands, he could go back in glory. As the midsummer arrived, Ji's popularity was pushed to another peak. Others racked their brains for her, but she lived a comfortable life as a pregnant woman. "Tiske, the young master in my belly is more important than me." Wei Si said, "Why do you say so, my lord?" "Of course, my lord is more important than the young master." Jiang? Ji said, "In the past, when I was lazy, you would dig 3 feet into the ground to find me. Now you are fighting for work. The difference in treatment is so big." Everyone was fighting to work overtime. Ji's slight movement of the bamboo slips would attract countless worried gazes. If she had known that pregnant women would feel so good, she would have given birth to a few when she was free. Wei Si said, "Pregnant women should not work hard. The meaning of the child in my lord's belly is different. They naturally value it more." Those in the know knew that the child was artificial. Those who did not know would think that it was a pregnancy. If the child was accidentally given by Jiang? Ji Lang was gone, wouldn't everyone be worried about the wrath of heaven? "Ginger?" Ji said, "I don't care. You are treating me differently." She was pregnant, not a cripple. If they didn't allow this or that, did they still have her as their lord in their eyes? Ginger? Ji's zodiac was that of a donkey. Instead of walking when led, he would retreat when beaten. The more Feng Zhen and the others tried to stop her from working, the more she insisted on going. Not only did he have to do a lot of things, but he also had to work overtime. I love work, work makes me happy. Everyone. He deeply suspected that the Lord was having a fake pregnancy. That's hard to say. Feng Zhen looked at his lord, who was jumping up and down, and then thought about how other pregnant women behaved like porcelain dolls when they were pregnant. He suddenly felt a headache coming on. She was really pregnant. She was worried that her lord would lose the child. What about a fake pregnancy? Not only would he be upset, but the others would also be so angry that they would find noodles to hang themselves. As time passed, Feng Zhen became more and more worried, and the more worried he became, the balder he became. Where did his lord's pregnant belly go? Where did my lord hide her pregnant belly? She was 4 to 5 months pregnant, so she should at least have some small hills, right? Where's the lord? Pig trotters. Complaining was one thing, but Feng Zhen wouldn't voice his worries, lest they waver. Because of Jiang? The artificial halo that Ji created for the child was too big. Everyone's eyes were focused on her belly. If there were rumors that the pregnancy was fake, when she gave birth to the child in the future, there would be people among the people who would say that the child wasn't her biological child, but that she had adopted it to cover up her lie. Feng Zhen's worries were obviously unnecessary. With Wei Ci sparing no effort to promote the child as a God-sent child and different from ordinary children, who would blindly compare. If the God-sent child was like an ordinary child, then they would feel that it was unreal. Feng Zhen, Wei Ci was shameless. It was fine if it was others, but as the biological father, how could Wei Ci not know whether the child was conceived by instinct or artificially made? Jiang? Ji's unprecedented enthusiasm for work erupted. During this period, she also paid close attention to the work of the scholars who were sent abroad. After all, it was a remote and desolate place, a place far away from the emperor. It was hard to guarantee that there weren't any daring people who bullied them. Of course, she also had to pay attention to these scholars to prevent them from losing themselves in an unrestrained place. Fortunately, these young people didn't disappoint her. Their methods were slightly immature, but they were growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Other than that, Jiang? Ji was still most concerned about the situation in Zhongzhou. Taking down half of the country in just over 20 days was very impressive, but it didn't mean that such a strong momentum could be maintained forever. Qiguan Rang and the others also realized the drawbacks and had been adopting a steady approach these days. They had to first stand firm and stabilize their foundation before moving forward. Qiguan Rang was the type of person who would go wild when he could, but when he wasn't he would fight steadily and defend himself like a hedgehog. The feudal lords of Zhongzhou couldn't do anything to him at all. Instead, Qiguan Rang took advantage of them. Among them, the Nie family of Zhongzhou was also on its last legs. Among the few feudal lords that still existed in Zhongzhou, the overall strength of the Nie family could no longer be ranked. Speaking of which, it was quite a pity. Their original master, Nie Qin, had experienced several internal rebellions in the Nie family and disappeared during the last rebellion. Sun Wen and Qiguan Rang were behind these rebellions. With the fall of the Nie family, the feudal lords of Zhongzhou completely lost their backbone. That was why Qiguan Rang and the others had taken advantage of them. However, this wasn't enough. Old Master Sun Wen asked Qiguan Rang, "What are you calculating?" Qiguan Rang replied, "Calculating the hour." Or? Craning his neck to take a look, Old Master Sun Wen's expression became more subtle. If he wasn't mistaken, Qiguan Rang was calculating the hour of his lord's pregnancy and delivery. What are you trying to do? Old Master Sun Wen was a little confused. Even though he was experienced and knowledgeable, he couldn't understand Qiguan Rang's operation. Qiguan Rang said, "Before the young lord is born, I want to take down the other half of Zhongzhou." Having only half of Zhongzhou was inauspicious. Taking down the other half before the child was born would make it a whole. This was a good sign. Sun Wen was speechless. Had Qiguan Rang ever considered the elderly? No, he hadn't. He only considered the lord and the young lord. Even his own father wasn't as dedicated as him. Old Master Sun thought of how Dongqing and Nanxing had all closed down and only Zhongzhou was still in full swing. He suddenly felt like he had shot himself in the foot. Back then, Feng Zhen and the others had worked themselves to death and fought battles everywhere. They weren't as carefree as he was. Looking back now, he suddenly realized that the arrows in his heart were the flags he had set back then. Qiguan Rang still felt that it wasn't enough. He sent people to Xichang and Beiyuan to investigate. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Chapter 1804. As the months slowly grew longer, Jiang Pingji's health improved. Ji Yunshu's pregnant belly was still not out, but no one dared to slack off. Her status was now on par with Wei Si's daughter. Ginger? Ji could not help but complain, "National treasure panda, I'm now the only humanoid national treasure. I'm not happy at all." As he rubbed the panda girl darling's chin and the white fur on her head, an indescribable loneliness welled up in his heart. Other people had all kinds of pregnancy symptoms, but only she was strange. She really wanted to work and no one could stop her. If she didn't work, she would feel uncomfortable all over. Every day he was so energetic that he had nowhere to vent it. When he closed his eyes, he would dream that he was wandering in the sea of work, surrounded by official documents. The more she acted like this, the more everyone guarded against her. They were so scared that even in their dreams they were afraid. How could she not be worried? Which pregnant woman would react like this? 5 million salted fish's greatest pleasure right now was watching Ginger? Ji was pitting her wits against everyone else for the sake of her job. Digital evolution. If I had the energy of the streamer when I was pregnant, my boss would have been so happy that his teeth would have fallen out. Shan Xingshui Fui Buyuo. It's rare to see a pregnant woman like the streamer. Most women have a hard time during pregnancy and they lack energy. Edema, obesity, gluttony, these were all normal. If anyone was as energetic as the host when they were pregnant, their figure was not deformed, their belly was not swollen, their skin was so good that even a fly could break its leg if it stood on it, and they were also enthusiastic about their work. It was estimated that it would not be so difficult for women to get a job. Nowadays, women who have not given birth to a second child are far less competitive in the workplace than men who have the ability. Apart from these, there were also many experienced mothers who gave advice to Jiang Xiang. Ji Zhizhao told her what she could and couldn't eat. In short, the first child should be raised according to the book, and the second should be raised according to the pig. Ginger? Ji Yunshu's daughter, Nan Nan, who was carrying a bear's brain, was confused. Then was she considered to be the first or second child? During the 6th month of pregnancy, the weather in the north became a little chilly. Ji woke up one day and suddenly lost interest in work. That day she was dispirited and had no appetite for anything she ate. She looked so dispirited that it was as if she had lost all attachment to the world. Feng Zhen and the others watched with raised eyebrows. They didn't know what ideas their lord had come up with to torment them again. "My lord is not going to the government office today? Ginger?" Ji Yunshu waved her hand and said, "I'm not going. Just looking at those bamboo slips gives me a headache. I don't want to read a single word of it now." The lord's mood was like a child's face, changing at a whim. Without waiting for Feng Zhen and the others to heave a sigh of relief, thinking that their lord was finally willing to focus on nurturing the fetus, she began to stir up trouble again. Zhang Ping of the woodworking workshop was unjustly implicated. He had to bear the merciless criticism from the crowd. In all honesty, he really wasn't the one who seduced his lord to go to the carpentry workshop. He was also innocent. Who knew why his lord came to the carpentry workshop and refused to leave? She also said that the wood shavings from the wood workshop were extremely delicious. Just by smelling the aroma, one could eat more than 20 bowls of rice. It was too fragrant. Feng Zhen's expression changed involuntarily, as if he had seen a ghost. "What do you mean by the smell of sawdust smells good? Would a normal person like sawdust and even want to roll into a pile of sawdust to sleep? With his lord's soft skin and tender flesh, wasn't she afraid that the sawdust would stab her all over in pain? I heard that pregnant women have strange temperaments during pregnancy. My lord's behavior isn't out of line," said a colleague whose wife had given birth to 3 children and was very experienced in pregnancy. The most important thing for a pregnant woman is to be in a good mood. Don't go against her wishes. You must go along with her. Feng Zhen held it in for a long time but couldn't say anything. He wanted to retort. He was the father of 2 children, and he had been by his side both times when his wives were pregnant. How could their pregnancies be so normal? However, he thought that this analogy might offend the lord, so he forced himself to hold it in. The other officials were also silent for a long time. Most of them were in their 30s or 40s and had become fathers long ago. They had at least 2 children and indeed had never encountered such a phenomenon. There was even someone who secretly complained to his close friend. "It's not so good to have a female lord. Once she gets pregnant, everyone seems to have become a father for once." Friend versus Ginger? Ji Yunshu was very respectful. When she heard this, her expression changed and she decided to cut ties with this friend. Friends who are disloyal and disrespectful to the ruler should not be made. The official, who had a strong desire to live, added, "Lord Jiang only has this child at such a young age, Everyone is afraid that she will bump into something. Ever since she announced that she was pregnant, she had not had a good night's sleep. The god who bestowed Linner has not moved, but us officials are trembling with fear. His friend said with a dark expression, "Even so, you can't say such disrespectful words." If these words were to spread to the ears of outsiders, he was not afraid of being punished. The official said, "I have absolutely no disrespect." He was respectful and trembling with fear. Ji Yunshu had been worried since the beginning of her pregnancy. She had to endure the other party's unreasonable pregnancy reaction. Wasn't this like being a father for once? If it was the wife of the family, no matter how uncomfortable she felt in her heart or how uncomfortable she was, she would not torment her husband with such trivial matters. But who was the Lord? If the Lord was in a bad mood, the unlucky ones were the officials. The other party said whatever he had on his mind without any scruples. Therefore, during the period of Ji Yunshu's pregnancy, the officials felt that being a father was even stronger than their own wives' pregnancies. There were even nosy officials who turned to their wives and complained that the Lord was unpredictable, changed her attitude faster than the weather, and had strange hobbies. Unexpectedly, the wives at home rolled their eyes and told them many pregnancy details that made them flabbergasted. What kind of pregnancy hobbies were fanatical about work and wood shavings? There was a lady who liked to pick her feet after she was pregnant, then put her fingers under her nose and sniffed. If she did not smell it, she would vomit and would not be able to eat. However, for the sake of her personal image, when she did this, she had to send away the maids and old women who served her, leaving only 2 confidantes. There was a lady who liked to go to the toilet and squat in the pit after she was pregnant. It was said that the smell in the pit was very pleasant, and her dispirited spirit also improved. That lady's husband, no wonder the lady had been locked in her room after she was pregnant and refused to get close to him. Even when they met, she would put on perfume. Also, the lady liked the feeling of farting and liked to nest under the blanket to do so. There was also a lady who had a special hobby. She liked to rub the body mud from the tailbone, collect it bit by bit and rub it into a big ball. Everyone, looking at their wives' breaths, elegant and graceful, and then thinking about how they looked when they did this, they just wanted to raise their hands to their foreheads. Was there any way to continue living like this? In comparison, it seemed that their Lord was more like a normal pregnant woman. She only loved to work and liked carpentry. She did not take off her shoes and pick her feet to smell it, nor did she squat in the pit to smell feces. She did not love to fart, and she did not rub the mud around her son to collect it. Thinking about it this way, it seemed that having such a Lord was quite a blessing. Chapter 1805. Zhang Ping and the rest had experimented and explored repeatedly. With Ji's help, they had already made natural rubber that could be used to make solid tires. It was just that this kind of tire was heavier. Ji had only completed half of the bicycle design previously, and was still figuring out the other half. Jiang? Why did Ji suddenly think of the carpentry workshop? Because she suddenly remembered that she had not taken Wei Ci for a ride. A bicycle was needed for a ride, and Zhang Ping and the rest were inefficient, so they had not sent the finished product to her. As the saying went, do it yourself and you will have everything you need. Ji came to the carpentry workshop to inspect the progress, and was immersed in it, unable to get out. Thanks to this period of contact, Ji found that the development of the carpentry workshop had entered a certain abnormal state. They had accumulated enough experience and their practical and creative abilities were not low, but the gap was very serious. Other than Zhang Ping and the other 2 and a few talented craftsmen, the others only knew how to copy, and had no idea why they were doing it, let alone improving it. When she asked Zhang Ping, he thought it was a problem of personal talent. The inheritance of the Mahists had always been difficult, and they had always chosen talented disciples. Those without talent who entered this branch of the Mahists would only be ordinary craftsmen with slightly better skills in the end. Jiang? Ji frowned and asked how the Mahists taught their disciples, and this question revealed the crux of the problem. Zhang Ping cautiously asked, Lord, do you feel that something is wrong? Everyone said that pregnant women were temperamental, and their Lord was in control of life and death. She could kill when she was angry. Jiang? Ji said, I know what the problem is. Has Shiheng paid attention to the mathematics courses of the students of the Golden Scale Academy? Zhang Ping said, I vaguely heard about it. Jiang? Ji communicated with Zhang Ping seriously, I'll say something you don't like to hear. The Mahist theory itself is not suitable for the complicated court, But this does not mean that the Mahists are less useful than the Confucians and the legalists. On the contrary, in the way of the people's livelihood, it has a role that the Confucians and the legalists cannot compare. Whether it is the Confucians, the legalists or the Mahists, descendants are the foundation of inheritance. Without descendants, no matter how amazing the knowledge is, there will be no one to inherit and pass it on. I don't think that the Mahists have high requirements for descendants. I feel that the Mahists have taken a detour on this path, or should I say, the wrong path. I've been observing the carpentry workshop for the past few days and found that many people know what to do according to the blueprints. Their craftsmanship is superb, but when the parts are slightly adjusted, they will mess up. There were many similarities between the manufacturing methods of many things. If he could summarize these similarities, wouldn't he be able to avoid many detours? Can you simplify everything? After listening, Zhang Ping pondered for a long time. He seemed to have grasped something, but he could not grasp the gist of it. He could only ask Jiang for help. Your subject is ignorant. Please clarify further, my lord. Ginger? Ji said, for example, in the computational classic of Zhou, Shang Gao said, fold the rules, hook the 3, cultivate the 4 and the 5. The 9 chapters of arithmetic says, multiply the Pythagorean, and divide it, that is the chord. Between them, other than this example, are there other constant and unchanging rules? I feel that if we can decipher these, or rather, summarize them, the future generations will be able to avoid many detours. Now, the most important thing for the carpentry workshop is not to invent many siege weapons or defense weapons. The world is about to be settled. Their role will also change from attacking the enemy to deterring those thieves in the surrounding countries, so that foreign enemies will not dare to invade the people. However, this does not mean that the carpentry workshop has lost its purpose. It can only turn to research things that are beneficial to the people. I hope that it can continue to develop and go further. I even want to add this knowledge to the textbooks of the Golden Scale Academy so that they can learn it. Experience can only be understood and not explained, but knowledge is different. It is better to memorize than to know nothing. After listening, Zhang Ping was silent for a long time. Occasionally, confusion flashed across his eyes. As for the research on the laws, Ginger? Ji originally wanted Zhang Ping and the others to let nature take its course, but she did not expect them to reach a dead end. So, she naturally had to help them. Ginger? Ji could only say so much. How much Zhang Ping and the others could comprehend would depend on their own luck. After that, Zhang Ping and Ginger continued to make her bicycle. Ji continued to make her bicycle. The other parts were easy to make, but the most difficult part was the chain. She didn't know what an old-fashioned bicycle looked like, so she listened to the idle spectators and drew a lot of circles. This was also the main reason why Zhang Ping had not finished the bicycle for several months. What was he supposed to do with those messy circles? I wonder if it's Ginger? Ji's resentment was too deep. When she was 8 months old, she found out that the European king of 1,000 years was actually a technical worker at a closed bicycle factory. Coincidentally, the identity of the transmigrator was from the carpentry workshop. When he transmigrated, he was in Jiangxiang. In front of Ji. They looked at each other in dismay. The atmosphere was as silent as honey. I want a bicycle. When a streamer that they had been following for more than 10 years made a request to you, which salted fish could refuse? Not to mention that this salted fish had been unemployed for more than 2 months. Just as he was worrying about how he was going to make a living, he became the lucky king who was chosen. If he did it well, he would immediately become an internet celebrity. Create. The European king nodded vigorously. He was not a man if he did not build a bicycle. However, the lucky king looked at Jiang. Ji Yunshu's stomach started to tremble. She felt that she couldn't put her hand anywhere. Before the 7th month of pregnancy, Jiang Guoxiang was pregnant. Ji Yunshu's stomach had always been excessively flat. It was even slimmer than an A4 waist and had beautiful abs. 7 months later, her stomach was like a balloon that slowly swelled up. It was a different shape every day. Now that it had been more than 8 months, she finally felt like a pregnant woman about to give birth. The crux of the matter was that they were twins. It was very difficult to carry them to full term. Typically they would give birth after just 9 months. The lucky king was a little hesitant. If he helped the tyrant build the bicycle, would this big shot ride it with a big belly? In the end, his strong desire to live won over his worry. With his participation, the bicycle went through a series of changes and finally made its grand debut half a month later. Zhang Ping looked at what was said to be a bicycle and was at a loss as to how to use it. It was used as a cart and it was not stable. After all, it had 2 wheels and not 3 wheels. If he didn't support it, it would fall to the ground. Jiang? Ji Yunshu was excited. I'll teach you how to drive this thing. Salted fish? Zhang Ping. The helping tyrant lucky king. The nightmare had come true. Tudu Feiqiu. If I remember correctly, the streamer doesn't know how to ride a bicycle. Jiang? In Ji Yunshu's era, technology was too advanced. How could there be bicycles? Everyone's shared transportation was a maglev car, alright? Jiang? It was true that Ji didn't know how to ride a bicycle, but she had long legs. Even if she didn't know how to ride, she wouldn't fall. Her sense of balance could be slowly found. As one of the best fighters in the Federation, how could she not even be able to handle a bicycle? But, just as she held the handle, her stomach began to ache. The feeling grew stronger and stronger. Jiang? Ji, could this be the old chief's desire to live? Zhang Ping asked carefully, Lord, what's wrong? Jiang? Ji held her stomach with one hand and looked calm. However, what she said made Zhang Ping unable to calm down. Chapter 1806. Go to the delivery room? What? Zhang Ping was puzzled at first, but he soon froze on the spot. His eyes glanced down stiffly and landed on Jiang Pingji's belly. My lord, are you going to start? Zhang Ping stammered. Only his brain could still move. The rest of his limbs had stopped working. He had forgotten how to use them. Jiang Pingji stroked her belly that seemed to be falling. She frowned and thought for a while. She said uncertainly, should be? What do you mean should be? Zhang Ping was stunned. How could he respond to what his lord had said? Jiang Pingji frowned and said confidently, it's my first time giving birth too. How do I know if this feeling has started? Haven't you been a father for a while? Why don't you have this common sense? Why are you asking me? Hold the bicycle first. I'll take a breather. Zhang Ping took the bicycle in a daze. He had indeed been a father before, but the child did not crawl out of his belly. He knew what was going on, but he had not experienced it firsthand. Fortunately, Zhang Ping was still reliable. After a second, he immediately pushed the bicycle to the maid beside him and hurriedly called for help. I say slow down. The child has not been born yet. If you push me too fast, it might fall out halfway. Jiang Pingji did not forget to say some flirtatious words at this time. Her ability to endure pain was unimaginable by ordinary people, so she felt fine at the moment. The others were anxious. Zhang Ping wanted to carry her to the delivery room and hand her over to the midwife. In the end, Zhang Ping did not have the strength to fly. He did not dare to touch Jiang Pingji. He could only bear with his anger and stare at her. She was pregnant with twins. The doctor said that twins were usually born at the end of August or the beginning of September. It was rare for them to survive to full term. In other words, Jiang Pingji, who was in her early 9th month of pregnancy, could give birth at any time. Everything that needed to be prepared was ready at any time. Jiang Pingji's range of activities was also limited to not far from the delivery room. It was very convenient to go there. Zhang Ping looked at his lord, who was said to be giving birth, walking steadily to the delivery room with cold sweat. He had the illusion that his worldview had been refreshed. Just send it here. Wait for news. Jiang Pingji took a deep breath to relieve the discomfort in her stomach. She waved her hand with her back to Zhang Ping and entered the delivery room with the help of the maid. Zhang Ping? The others also received the news one after another. Except for a few who really couldn't leave their posts, the group of important ministers all arrived. Except for Wei Ci. Of course, everyone's attention was on Jiang Pingji. How could they notice that Wei Ci was missing? When will the baby be born? Zhang Ping said, it hasn't even been 5 minutes since the Lord went in. No matter how fast he is, he'll have to wait for a few hours, right? The official was shocked when he heard that. How many hours? Why is it taking so long? Zhang Ping, what kind of tone was that? It was as if his wife could go in and take a dump and come out. Was giving birth that simple? It was considered fast for the first time to give birth within a few hours. Some women with narrow birth tracts and difficulties in giving birth would need to give birth for a day or two. The next official hurried over, and the first thing he asked was, is the young master a man or a woman? Zhang Ping said, it hasn't even been 10 minutes since the Lord went in. It hasn't even started yet. How would she know if it's a man or a woman? The official was stunned. It's only been the time to brew a cup of tea? Why does it feel like half a day has passed? Zhang Ping. Feng Jin came over at that moment. Zhang Ping didn't wait for him to speak before saying, the Lord went in for 10 minutes and hasn't started yet. We don't know if the young master is a man or a woman. If everything goes smoothly, we can see the young master in a few hours. If not, we might have to wait for a day. Feng Jin gave him a baffled look as if to say, "Aren't you spouting nonsense?" Zhang Ping? He couldn't be angry. Today was his lord's day. Being angry would ruin her luck. Slowly, more than 30 people gathered in the main hall outside the delivery room. Everyone had different expressions, but no one took the initiative to speak. They waited and waited. After another 10 minutes, someone said in a low voice, "Why isn't there any movement?" As the standard men in the feudal era, their children would wait for the harvest after sowing. Some of the better ones would spend the pregnancy with their wives. Some of the worse ones would just leave the work to them and only care about their children. Even when their wives gave birth, they would wait in the study. Therefore, they only knew that pregnant women would scream in pain during childbirth, but they didn't know the details. They thought that all women went through the same process during childbirth. Maybe it hasn't started yet? Feng Jin also said, "Maybe it's to save energy." Qian Su and Lu Jing sat in the corner. Occasionally they would look in the direction of the delivery room. Their expressions were similar, but their thoughts were different. He held the blessing of peace in his palm and muttered in a low voice, "I hope the birth goes smoothly and there are no twists and turns." He meant what he said. Jiang Pingji treated Yang Tao and his former subordinates very leniently. If it were another lord, things would be different. The best outcome would be the safety of the mother and child. The worst outcome would be the death of the child. Those with ulterior motives could take the opportunity to spread rumors that Jiang Pingji was not the chosen one by God and that she had cursed Ziwei Star. The worst outcome would be the safety of the child and the mother dying in childbirth. It would be convenient for those with ulterior motives to seize power. The worst outcome would be the death of both mother and child. In that case, such a situation would probably not happen. Those people were ruthless, but they wouldn't want to see the world that had just been stabilized return to war. Lu Jing said, "It will go smoothly and be safe for all three of us." Qian Su turned to look at him. Lu Jing was a surrendered official and kept a low profile. She didn't expect him to appear here today. There won't be any accidents. Lu Jing was certain. Qian Su said, "I hope so." Although she said that, Qian Su was not confident. It was too dangerous for a woman to give birth. Even if there were no external forces plotting against her, it was easy to have a dystocia and hemorrhage. Everyone outside was panicking, but the atmosphere in the delivery room was quite harmonious. The midwives that were originally prepared were not put to use. Or it could be said that Jiang Pingji had someone she trusted more. The midwives became decorations. She entered the delivery room and turned off the live stream. It was said that Weibo had long been prepared and borrowed external servers from a big company. They hoped that Weibo could withstand the wave of traffic attacks. Thinking of that situation, Jiang Pingji couldn't help but laugh again. The servant who was supporting her said, "I've served so many ladies giving birth, but this is the first time I've seen someone enter the delivery room with a smile. Lord Jiang is in good health and will give birth to Lin, smoothly. Thank you for your auspicious words." Jiang Pingji's face was very pale, but her smile was still considered relaxed. The production tools of this era were very backward. Women gave birth while lying on the bed or squatting on the ground. The latter was easier to exert force than the former, but only peasant women would do that. Women were in severe pain during childbirth. It was really cruel to make them squat to give birth without relieving their pain. Jiang Pingji had no experience in childbirth, but the salted fish in the 5 million streaming room was not incompetent. Through teaching, she made a delivery bed that could be used for sitting and lying. The design of the delivery bed was convenient to exert force, but the people of this era felt ashamed when they saw it. They didn't understand its use. The midwife looked at it and felt puzzled. Jiang Pingji said, "Go to the side and wait." The midwife. Genius remembered the website address in a second. Mobile version. Chapter 1807. Soon, the midwife understood that she was just a decoration. A man who should never have appeared in the delivery room. Get them to cover their eyes. Don't look at things they shouldn't see. Jiang Pingji's tone was very calm. One could not tell that she was a pregnant woman who was about to give birth. Wei Si said, "Leave it to me, my lord." The delivery room was cleaned up. Irrelevant people were herded to the cubicle to wait, including the midwife and the doctor. Only the maidservants who were in charge of boiling water could wait outside. They were all watched by special people. Some had ulterior motives and were extremely afraid. Some were baffled but did not dare to object. This doesn't look like the grandeur that Lord Jiang should have when giving birth. Jiang Pingji was still in the mood to joke at this moment. Wei Xi said, giving birth doesn't require so many people to move around. Not only is it easy to cause trouble, but it will also give people with ulterior motives an opportunity to take advantage of. Even with experience, Wei Xi was so nervous that his hands were trembling. Many imperial concubines, princes and princesses were killed in this way in the unofficial history of the palace without anyone knowing. Jiang Pingji was really in pain at this moment. She lay on the delivery bed and looked at her slightly shameful posture of waiting to give birth. She smiled and said to Wei Xi, I heard that there used to be a man who accidentally saw his wife giving birth. Since then, he has been dispirited and has no interest in treating his wife. Wei Xi said, I've seen it twice. Have you seen me in such a situation before? Jiang Pingji was shocked by the bold and unrestrained Wei Xi that day. If it were you on a normal day, you would most likely be so embarrassed that you wouldn't be able to speak. Wei Xi sighed and said, My lord is about to give birth. I have to accept whatever you say and make you happy. This is my duty. A woman's positive emotions were conducive to giving birth. If she was seriously frightened, it might even cause the position of the fetus to be reversed, from a natural birth position to a difficult birth position. Wei Xi could not afford to take the risk. If this could make the lord feel more relaxed, why not let her tease him a little? Why are you touching my stomach? After her pregnant belly appeared, she was particularly ticklish. Wei Xi's warm fingers touched her stomach, making her want to laugh. Touch the position of the fetus. If it's not in the right position, turn it over before the fetus enters the basin. There's such a method? Wei Xi said, I specially found someone to learn it. I disguised myself and followed them to a few places and learned a thing or two. Jiang Pingji laughed. Are you going to dress up as a girl? Wei Xi answered patiently, if I was dressed as a man they wouldn't have let me in. I'm afraid I would have been beaten out by the host. Cross-dressing. Wei Xi. He actually didn't get beaten out? Jiang Pingji scrutinized Wei Xi's serious face. She was not surprised. His appearance was exquisite and beautiful. He didn't have the cold and hard edges of a man, but he wasn't as feminine as a woman either. After dressing up a little, applying some makeup and changing into a more voluminous female outfit, one would indeed look like an iconic beauty at first glance. Although they are twins, the positions of the fetuses are very good. After the examination, Wei Xi heaved a sigh of relief. The probability of a natural birth of twins was not high. Most of the time one would die prematurely. Did you experience dystocia because the fetus was in an irregular position? Wei Xi said, Her Majesty's body was suffering from a chronic illness. She was entangled with worldly affairs and did not take good care of the fetus. She met with trouble during childbirth. In the end, both mother and daughter were safe. When a woman gave birth, outsiders could not help much. Don't be fooled by the scenes of people giving birth in the TV series. The midwives worked very hard and the maids fetching hot water ran back and forth. If you really went to a modern delivery room to take a look, you would realize that when the delivery room was busy, one midwife had to look after several beds of pregnant women. According to the TV series, the nurses and doctors would be too busy even if they had 3 heads and 6 arms. Wait until the uterus is almost opened before exerting force. My lord can save up some strength now. Wei Xi used a handkerchief to wipe away the beads of sweat that rolled down her forehead and almost wet her eyelashes so that she wouldn't feel uncomfortable. Then talk to me for a while. Jiang Pingji's ability to endure pain was extremely high, but this body was not original after all. No matter how much pain she could endure, there was an upper limit. What does my lord want to talk about? Jiang Pingji said, anything is fine. I'm really in pain now. Talk and be distracted. Her pain was really painful. It was not the pain that she used to say when she was acting coquettishly or teasing Wei Xi. However, Wei Xi could only watch and was unable to share her burden. Jiang Pingji forced a somewhat stiff smile. I want to hear how you like me. The two of them did not make much noise when they spoke. Those who were a distance away could not hear what they said, let alone the people waiting outside the delivery room. Feng Jin and the others waited for more than 2 hours. This was probably the longest they had ever waited for more than 2 hours. Afterwards, when some people recalled it, they could not help but complain that even their wives did not wait for so long when they gave birth. At that moment, no one had the mood to laugh at themselves. There was no movement in the delivery room. Their hearts could only be raised high with nowhere to rest. Some people could not help but imagine situations such as a hemorrhage and dystocia. The more they thought about it, the more afraid they became. The more they were afraid, the more they could not get rid of the images in their minds. The real situation was very different from what they imagined. Jiang Pingji's delivery was very smooth. Because of her special body, her belly did not really show until 7 months. She did not have too much nutrition during her pregnancy, so the size of the fetus was not big. When Wei Ci said that he could see the baby's head, her body was a little numb from the pain, but she still did as she was told. At that moment Wei Ci was calm. He steadily helped the baby out of the birth canal with both hands. His actions were agile. Jiang Pingji felt her belly loosen up a little. She asked while sweating profusely, "Is it a boy or a girl?" "It's a girl. It's a girl." Even though Jiang Pingji already knew the answer, she felt that there was a different meaning in asking after going through the procedure. The eldest daughter was small, but her voice was very loud. Her voice could be heard in the main hall outside the delivery room. She cried pitifully. Jiang Pingji, no matter how Wei Ci coaxed her, she did not stop crying. Jiang Pingji waved her hands weakly and said, "Let her cry for a while. She's been wronged." Wei Ci. Jiang Pingji could not tell Wei Ci that her daughter had been kicked into the basin to give birth. Don't think that she could not see the situation in her belly with her mental strength. "Pei Qian, what's wrong with you kicking my daughter? Look at this child crying." The second child was born in the time it took to brew a cup of tea. Her crying was a little weak and her voice was childish. She pulled the daughter's leg and fixed her eyes on her. "She's also a girl." Wei Ci panicked at first, but after taking a closer look at the appearance of the two children, he breathed a sigh of relief. They were not quite the same. That was safe. Jiang Pingji could not help but roll her eyes. Fraternal twins were not identical. Wasn't it normal for them to look different? Unbeknownst to her, Wei Ci had worried about these two children for a long time. There was a period of time when he dreamed of two identical children standing in front of him. They kept asking him to distinguish who was the eldest and who was the second. If he guessed wrongly, they would have to leave. "Have you named them?" Wei Ci said, "There are a few. Do you want to continue using the name Jiang Yan?" "Don't. Otherwise it's unfair to both of them." Jiang Pingji was silent for a while. "Lin Lang, one Jiang Lin, one Jiang Lang?" Wei Ci. "Is the Lord sure you want to trick your youngest daughter like this? The character Lang has a good meaning, but do you still remember your surname, my lord? Jiang Lang, Jiang Lang, Jiang Lang has run out of ideas? Why don't we each name one?" Chapter 1808. Most of the words beside the word you had good connotations. They could be chosen as names, but they could not be named so casually. They had to go through the process. Jiang Pingji asked, "Must it be you?" Wei Ci did not know why it had to be you. Jiang Yan's name was chosen by drawing lots. Wei Tsong came with his sister. The third and fourth children should follow this naming custom. Otherwise it would seem a little unconventional. Even people with obsessive-compulsive disorder could not stand it. Jiang Pingji said, "Since there is no convention, let's change it." Wei Ci's brows twitched. He had a bad feeling. "For example? Zua. What about Jiang Zua?" When Wei Ci heard the word, he could not think of which Zua it was. Jiang Pingji continued, "The word Zua is a blessing. It has the meaning of protection and also the meaning of the throne." Wei Ci was almost shocked. The child was born less than an hour ago, but he was given the Zua of the Zua. He was worried that if the blessing was too great, it would harm the child. Jiang Pingji did not care about Wei Ci's worries. She felt that the word Zua was as arrogant as the halo on her daughter's head. The name Jiang Zua doesn't sound good. Wei Ci thought for a while and suggested, "How about Lian?" "Lian?" Wei Ci said, "Lian is a vessel used to hold food during sacrifices in ancient times. It also has the intention of inheriting the ancestral weapon. She is regarded as the heir." Compared to being careless and arrogant, holding up the child to tell the world that she was the heir to the throne, it was better to be more subtle. Whether it was Jiang Lian or Wei Ci, he hoped that she would be steady, honest and broad-minded. Not only would she inherit the ancestral weapon, but she would also be responsible for the national weapon. Jiang Pingji pondered for a long time. In the end she had no choice but to choose Lian as the child's name. Although she also had the intention of treating her as the heir, she expressed it in a more tactful way. It was somewhat vague. The third child's name was decided. As for the fourth child's name, to be honest, Jiang Pingji did not want to waste her brain cells. In the end she simply used a shortcut. Call her Jiang Yan. When Wei Ci heard the name he was stunned. Didn't the Lord say that you don't need yen? The beauty on the jade wall is called yen. What I'm talking about is the stone is like jade. When Wei Ci heard this, he frowned. He did not know if it was an illusion, but he felt that his lord did not like younger daughters. A stone that resembled jade was, in the end, a stone and not a beautiful jade. It only had the appearance but no substance. Wei Ci was not satisfied and he clearly expressed his dissatisfaction. Jiang Pingji did not know how to explain to Wei Ci that he only had 3 children in his 2 lives and that his youngest daughter was an impostor. She looked down at the baby girl in her arms. The little girl's eyes were closed and her breathing was steady and slow. She was extremely obedient. That's Jiang Yen, the Yen who is known as Yen because of her beauty. Jiang Pingji looked like she was going to argue with him. Wei Ci thought about it and nodded in agreement. To him, his eldest daughter was also Jiang Yen, and his youngest daughter was also Jiang Yen. Having the same name did not mean that they were the same person. Wei Ci would not mix them up. But he couldn't let his youngest daughter carry the name Bai, especially with his eldest daughter Lian as a foil. Who knew what those despicable people would say? 2 twin children, one in front of the other in the time it took to drink a cup of tea, but their futures were as different as heaven and earth. Not only their futures but even their names made it clear that the 2 were different. It really hurt his youngest daughter's heart. Wei Ci did not want his youngest daughter to get hurt, nor did he want the relationship between his lord and the little prince to drift apart because of this. Little did he know, relationship between mother and daughter? It was impossible. It was impossible in this lifetime. Jiang Pingji was worried that when he grew up, he would beat her until he called her daddy. Therefore she wanted to take advantage of him under smiley face when his wings hardened. Jiang Pingji's health was very good. Even though she had gone through a labor, she could now pack up and carry the child out. Since the child's first cry, everyone had been waiting anxiously for the young lord to come out. In the end, after waiting and waiting, there was still no movement from the delivery room. It couldn't be. Could something have happened to the lord? Feng Zhen and the others' hearts suddenly jumped to their throats. They wanted to send someone to inquire, but it was impossible. Finally, they saw their lord, who looked tired but still in good spirits, come out with 2 children in each of her arms. Everyone? In their impression, women were so weak after giving birth that they couldn't move, but their lord could still carry 2 children out at the same time. What a godly person. Despite their complaints, everyone still bowed down and congratulated her in unison. Congratulations, my lord, on the birth of Lin Er. Jiang Pingji said, the eldest daughter is Jiang Lian, and the second daughter is Jiang Yen. Twins? Hearing that the 2 children were of the same gender, a few observant officials frowned. Children who looked the same were not suitable to be the heir, unless one was gone or they had another child. Jiang Pingji did not have time to care about what they were thinking. She let the children's wet nurses carry them and sat on the mats on each side, accepting everyone's greetings. Not far away, the people in the front row could clearly see the children's faces. Upon closer inspection, they did not look alike. Seeing this, they breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, no one asked for a snub and suggested that Jiang Pingji give birth to a boy to inherit the throne. What? The halo on Princess Lian's head was too dazzling. She was Ziwei, a gift from the heavens. Who could defeat the incarnation of Ziwei the Great who came to the world? Of course, there were also people who hoped that the male heir would inherit the throne, but they did not dare to say it out loud for fear of incurring the wrath of the heavens. For now, they would take things one step at a time. If Princess Lian and Princess Yen were not qualified enough to inherit the throne, they would persuade the lord to give birth to another child in the future. They could not hand over the throne to a mediocre heir, and the heir was a woman. The storm passed like this for the time being. Jiang Pingji also began to be pressured into confinement. Confinement isn't scientific at all. My body is very healthy. Do you believe that I can overturn 10 Fu Wangs? She had to lie in bed for a month without washing her hair or bathing. She could only wipe herself with hot water. It was unbearable. Wei Ci advised her to bear with it so that she would not suffer from confinement sickness. She was really bored. She could play with the children. The twins were much smaller than the single babies. They lay in the swaddling clothes like a small ball. Their skin was bright red and their facial features were wrinkled. They looked like little monkeys that had been shaved. However, Jiang Pingji did not say this metaphor out loud. Otherwise, Wei Ci would nag at her about how inauspicious it was. They're so ugly. What's so fun about them? How are they going to meet people in the future? Jiang Pingji did not hide her disdain. Oh, it was only limited to the younger daughter. The older daughter was definitely cute. The servant with a clean identity said, "Don't worry, Lord Jiang. The 2 princes are very handsome. You can see it when they're 1 month old." Children changed every day. After a while they would be cute and beautiful. It doesn't matter if they're ugly. They can't get married anyway. Just kidnap whoever you like. The clothes that the two children wore, the diapers that they used, the milk bottles and milk powder that they drank from, were all prepared by the old chief. She was probably the only person in the world who would buy such things for herself. How does it feel to be a baby? She used her fingertips to scratch the sole of the younger daughter's foot. The other party lazily opened her eyes and moved them away slowly. I heard that babies can only see a few dozen centimeters. How did you know I was in this direction? The younger daughter used her fist to fend off Jiang Pingji's harassment. She couldn't hear if she couldn't see clearly. She wasn't deaf. After a while, a hand stroked her butt. Because of this action, the sticky and uncomfortable but became even more uncomfortable. It's a little smelly. The diaper seems to be full. Do you want me to help you change it? The old chief was speechless. Chapter 1809. She couldn't fast forward, she could never fast forward. She could only tease the old chief now so that she wouldn't suffer losses in the future. Jiang Pingji was on the verge of being beaten to death. Her routine was to play with her daughter in the morning, work in the afternoon and sleep at night. The poor baby's sleeping schedule was different from Jiang Pingji's. When the latter was energetic, they slept soundly. The eldest, Jiang Lian, only knew how to eat, drink and sleep. She wouldn't cry when she was bullied. She just pouted and had a quiet personality. The second child was different. Jiang Pingji could still play with her at first, but she would resist later. For example, Jiang Pingji would play with her like a hooligan. When her face got close, she would kick her nose. Jiang Pingji slyly said, "Ouch, is the milk powder not weak enough? You don't have much strength in your kick. Are you tickling me?" The second child looked at Jiang Pingji faintly, like the gaze of the Grim Reaper. Since the birth of the twins, Jiang Pingji's status in the streaming room had plummeted. She was the big pig trotter Jiang in their mouth, while the two little kids were Princess Lian and Princess Yan. The second child also became the new queen's meme pack because of her and Jiang Pingji's intimidating gaze. Tudu Feiqiu, my Princess Yan's gaze is too sharp. This is the aura of a queen. She doesn't need a big gold chain, sunglasses, and cigars to exude a strong aura that belongs to a big boss. Princess Lian is a fairy-like soft girl. She's so cute and I want to hug her. Sans Hisangshi snacking. Looking at the two princes, I want to have babies every day. But thinking that the princes are someone else's fairy baby, I'm not so tempted. If I want to have such a high-quality baby, I have to find a male god of the same quality as Beauty Ci. Liang Ping Puzi snacking. The person above is also narcissistic. Do you think you can compete with Big Pig Trotter Jiang? To have a cute and smart baby like the princes, you must first be comparable to Big Pig Trotter Jiang. The man must be a male god of the same level as Wei Ci. Lanya Moshu Kaiwe. Speaking of this, a few days ago I saw a birthing video. It shamelessly violated the prince's portrait rights and used them as the video material. I was so angry that I made a report and continued to make a report. Wan Shenji, I'm already imagining the gentle and soft Princess Lian and the big boss Princess Yan in a decade or so. How powerful. Looking at the bullet screen, Jiang Pingji could not help but be speechless and choke as the salted fish unanimously categorized their boss, Jiang Lian, as a soft girl. Did they misunderstand the education of old Jiang's family? Soft girl? Impossible. No matter how soft she looked on the outside, she was still black and white on the inside. How could she be a soft girl? Moreover, with the old chief as a younger sister, Jiang Pingji was worried that her eldest daughter would be too domineering in the future. As it turned out, Jiang Pingji's worries were not unfounded. The two children were twins. In the eyes of outsiders, their bodies were not as strong as single babies. Therefore the third bath was not a big event. It was just a small gesture. After a month of growth, the two children had become as cute and delightful as white jade. Of course, the full moon banquet had to be grand. At the same time, this was also the first time the two children officially met the world. Feng Zhen and the others looked at the different but equally cute and healthy princes. Their hearts melted. Someone said that when Princess Lian was born, her cries were as loud as thunder. He knew she was extraordinary when he heard it. Now that he saw her, she was indeed full of nobility. Jiang Lian was the eldest daughter. She also had a meaningful name like Lian. Everyone knew Jiang Pingji's attitude. In comparison, the second daughter, Jiang Yan, received much less attention. She did not like to hear such things. One after another, they flattered her incessantly. It was only because the eldest was not sensible. If she knew, she would be half dead from all the flattery. Unruly people, who touched my milk bottle? The old chief's eyes suddenly became sharp. He held the milk bottle with one hand and held it with both hands. His gaze was like a knife. Feng Zhen retracted his hand in embarrassment. He was just curious about the transparent bottle and what was inside. The bottle was filled with a milky white liquid. It did not smell fishy like a wet nurse's. Instead, it was sweet and had a nice smell. Seeing Princess Yan's small mouth nibble on the bottle, Feng Zhen could not restrain his curiosity. He wanted to know what milk it was, so he stretched out his sinful claws. He looked around and saw that no one was paying attention. He quickly pulled out the old chief's milk bottle, squeezed some into his wine cup and returned the bottle to its owner. Feng Zhen thought he had done it without anyone noticing. He did not know that the owner of the milk bottle's eyes had become extremely dangerous. Feng Zhen tasted it and said, "It's not as sweet as I imagined, but it is indeed very fragrant." The old chief was speechless. A bastard who stole a baby's food for a month. Jiang Pingji only had this many people under her command? As he thought about it, the old chief's drinking speed increased. Who knew how long this one-month banquet would take? If Feng Zhen stole her milk again, wouldn't Jiang Pingji laugh at her? Ridicule her for being a good-for-nothing who could not even protect her own food? She drank too enthusiastically and neglected the difference between a baby's body and an adult's. Not long after, she felt a familiar feeling of fullness in her stomach. She was full. She threw the milk bottle aside and reached out to Feng Zhen for a hug. Unruly people, help me burp. Feng Zhen was also a man who had 2 sons. He knew that babies needed to burp when they were full, so he did not refuse. Thank you for your love, Your Highness. When the old chief patted his face, Feng Zhen thought that the child was trying to get close to him. The old chief was speechless. No, I just want to hit you, you shameless old man who stole my food. The old chief was deeply aware of how inconvenient a baby's body was. It didn't take long for him to feel sleepy. Perhaps it was because they were twins, the 2 children did everything in sync. One was sleepy and the other was almost as sleepy. However, the old chief still did not fall asleep, because she was awakened by a commotion. It happened a few minutes ago. Although the main characters of the one-month banquet were the 2 young princes, the people eating, drinking, and laughing were the adults. The young prince was sleepy and wanted to go to sleep. As adults, they continued to drink and have fun, pushing the atmosphere of the banquet to the highest point. At that moment, a sudden rush of footsteps came from outside. A messenger with a black panda flag on his back ran out of the hall unimpeded. In the process, he even stumbled and fell. In order to ensure the speed of communication, the messenger who delivered important information would have a conspicuous flag on his back. The color of the flag was the same as the grade of the military report. The black color was an important urgent letter. Anyone who saw the symbol and tried to stop him would be killed without mercy. That was why the messenger was able to arrive outside the palace unimpeded. He did not wait for his breath to catch his breath. He took out an urgent letter with a black panda seal on it. Report, there is an urgent report from the front line. Please read it, my lord. Information. At this time, everyone was worried after hearing this. An urgent report with a black seal was either good news or bad news. The former was good news, while the latter was a bad omen. They had not heard of any changes at the front line recently. Why would they choose a full moon day to send an urgent report 800 miles away? Could it be that someone was taking advantage of this day to secretly attack the Lord? Everyone had different thoughts. Only Jiang Pingji was calm. Good news and bad news. It was such a good day, yet he brought bad luck to her. She wanted to flip over the 18 generations of her ancestors' graves. Chapter 18:10. Bring it here. If it was a blessing, it wasn't a curse. If it was a curse, it couldn't be avoided. Even if it was bad news, Jiang Pingji did not intend to hide it. What auspicious omens or ominous omens? It was just a matter of her mouth. Even if it was an ominous sign, she could still lead her troops to kill the person who created the ominous sign and caused her trouble. The hall that was bustling with people toasting and exchanging toasts was now completely silent. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop on the floor. Jiang Pingji tore open the battle report and read it quickly. Her expression did not change at all, and the people below could not guess whether it was good news or bad news. It would be fine if it was good news, but if it was bad news, many people would be implicated. Not only will Her Highness's identity be questioned by the world, but those who fail to do their job will also be held accountable. If it's a light punishment, one person will lose his life, and if it's a heavy punishment, his entire family will have to pay. At that moment, the important ministers who were still outside were almost all veterans who had accompanied Jiang Pingji all the way. It was inappropriate to attack any of them. However, it was even more inappropriate to not make a move, as it would not be able to appease the people outside. If the crisis of public opinion was not handled well, the prestige that Jiang Pingji had painstakingly built up over the years would collapse. I don't know what happened. They thought of all the possible scenarios. For example, the Nanxing aristocrats rebelling. For example, the citizens of the northern borderline were unwilling to be integrated. For example, Qiguan Rang, who had previously been in the limelight, had failed to lead his troops. Half of Zhongzhao's territory, which he had spent a great deal of manpower to conquer, was gone. A few people in the banquet revealed faint sneers. Qiguan Rang's identity was the most controversial among Jiang Pingji's subordinates. Yang Si, the son of a prostitute, had a pure bloodline, but Qiguan Rang was a bastard with mixed blood. How many people were gnashing their teeth in jealousy for a bastard of humble birth to climb so high? Just the thought of serving in the same court as this kind of eccentric and sinister person made them somewhat unhappy. He had thought that Qiguan Rang would fall from grace, but he had almost become a god in one fell swoop. He had conquered half of the country in just over 20 days. Even if it was not all his credit, he had participated in it and was one of the main planners who had planned everything. The light that fell on him was not weak. Of course, there were people who were jealous, and there were also people who were worried that Qiguan Rang would promote a large number of people from the northern borderline in the future to compete with them. In just a few breaths of time, countless thoughts flashed through their minds. They thought of all kinds of possibilities, but they couldn't guess the truth. Jiang Pingji took a deep breath and slowly put down the urgent report in her hand. She glanced at the people in the hall. Those who were swept by her gaze subconsciously sat up straight. They were afraid that they would become Jiang Pingji's punching bag if they behaved inappropriately. After a long while, a silence that was as long as death by 1,000 cuts, Jiang Pingji slowly opened her mouth. "Everyone, I have something to tell you." When everyone heard this, they knew that the real show was about to begin. Continue to recuperate next year. Everyone? They were all prepared to welcome the storm. Did the Lord build up the atmosphere for so long just to say this? Continue to recuperate next year? Zhongzhao was not fighting anymore? Wenjing offers the other half of Zhongzhao to congratulate the young lord on his birthday. Those who have surrendered and those who refuse to surrender will be escorted by heavy troops. They will arrive in Wanzhou in at most 7 days. Jiang Pingji held up the battle report from the front line. Zhongzhao is already in our hands. Unfortunately, this place has suffered years of war and the people's lives are in dire straits. It's really not suitable for us to fight again. Therefore, Wenjing's letter suggests that we continue to recruit troops, train our elites, and soothe the people's pain of separation. The year after, we will conquer Beiyuan and Xichang in one fell swoop. Does anyone have any objections to this arrangement? Qiguan Rang had originally wanted to take Zhongzhao as a birthday gift. Unfortunately, things had gone awry. He, who had always had a smooth sailing life, was plotted against and was almost killed by the troops. Old Ginger was spicier. After Qiguan Rang escaped, he counterattacked. Both the enemy and himself were completely enraged. It was either you or I who died. In the end, Qiguan Rang's luck prevailed. Old Man Sun's reinforcements arrived in time to outflank the enemy. Along the way, some feudal vassals surrendered tactfully, while others would rather die than surrender. In the end, they were all tied up and sent to Wanzhou. Only one feudal vassal was different. They wanted to surrender, but Old Man Sun wouldn't let them. Someone advised the old man not to kill those who surrendered. The old man, who had always been easy to talk to, swore. No one could stop him. It turned out that this family's surname was Nie. It was the Nie family of Zhongzhao that was struggling at death's door and had played their cards badly. Old Man Sun still knew how to look at the big picture. He didn't exterminate the Nie family. He only wanted the Nie family to hand over the culprit who had killed his son, as well as the culprit's father, mother, and children. I lost my beloved wife and son, and my grandson lost his parents because of this person. The parents of such a disregard for the lives of innocent people should be killed. Kill his parents, kill his children. Let him have a taste of helplessness, pain, and being unable to resist. Sun Wen could still escape Dongqing with his grandson, Sun Lan, and come back many years later for revenge. The idiot in front of him only knew how to kneel and beg for mercy. He was worse than a stray dog. When Old Man's son personally killed his father, mother, and 5 legitimate children in front of that person, the scene was silent. No one dared to stop him. The only person who could stop him was Qiguan Rang. Not only did he not stop him, but he also wanted to personally hand Old Man's son his sword. Someone said that the old man was too cruel and cold-blooded. He didn't even spare a child. Qiguan Rang couldn't help but sneer. When these people sympathized with the weak, did they ever think that Old Man's son was the real victim and the weak? He only wanted to become stronger and seek revenge on the people who had harmed him. Revenge for revenge, revenge for revenge. The dust had settled in Zhongzhou, but Qiguan Rang couldn't be happy. He wanted to send a big gift on the young lord's birthday, but the time was wrong. Old Man's son said, "Even if there's no birthday gift, there's a 1-month gift. At the very least, there's a 1-year-old gift." Thus, this letter was delivered to him. The messenger ran all the way and a few horses died. Like a relay, it was finally delivered when the banquet was about to end. Qiguan Rang's generous gift undoubtedly made the halo on Jiang Lian's head shine even brighter. Yes, it was so bright that it could blind people's eyes. The old chief silently held the bottle and sucked on it. His fair face had the vicissitudes of an adult. "Serves you right for kicking my daughter. Otherwise, this extravagance would have been yours." Even the male lead of the main heroine didn't have Wen Zheng. He tried his best to conquer a country just to celebrate her birth. The old chief rolled his eyes at Jiang Pingji and didn't reply. Of course, she couldn't speak even if she wanted to. The baby's body didn't support this function. Babies grew very fast. They looked different every day. Babies who weren't even 1 year old were at their most adorable. Twins were even more rare. Everyone thought that Princess Lian was quiet and steady, while Princess Yen was lively and active. In the end, Princess Lian used her strength to prove that she was like her mother, while Princess Yen used her, as steady as Mount Tai, lazily to show what it meant to be motionless. Chapter 1811. As the saying goes, tumble, sit, roll, crawl, and walk. It referred to the important stages that children under 1 year old went through. Of course, it was noted that these were normal children. Some children would develop earlier or later, but it didn't matter. Jiang Pingji never thought that early development and late development would appear in the twins at the same time. Princess Lian had only cried once since birth. Even when her diapers were full of urine or feces, she would only frown and look at the people who appeared in her line of sight with teary eyes. She was quiet and didn't cry or make a fuss. She was so cute that she could melt people into a puddle of water. On the contrary, the younger twin sister, Princess Yen, was much more domineering. She had the aura of a baby boss written all over her body. As the two brats grew older, their personalities seemed to have changed. The originally quiet and soft sister became a little tyrant who would feel uncomfortable if she didn't move for a while the baby boss remained as lazy as a mountain. Therefore, Princess Lian, who had just turned 9 months old, could often be seen swaying from one end of the corridor to the other. The servant woman who was serving her wanted to help her, but her adorable smiling face drooped down and was replaced with a fierce expression. She mumbled something and refused vaguely. The servant woman didn't dare to refuse. She could only bite the bullet and follow behind her. Princess Lian's range of activity expanded from the original baby room to the corridor, then from the corridor to the small courtyard. To make it easier for her to move, the original flowers and decorative hills in the small courtyard were moved away. The pebbled path was also paved with neat wooden boards. The edges and corners were wrapped with soft, thick cloth to prevent her from bumping into anything. With a larger range of activity, she also wanted to try to evolve from walking to running. The results were expected. The little baby's legs were weak. It was already difficult for her to stand firmly and walk, let alone run. After running 2 steps, her knees gave way and she rolled forward. When she fell for the first time, she felt very wronged. Her little face, which always wore a smile, was stifled and tears welled up in her eyes. Just as she was about to cry, her younger sister took a pacifier out of nowhere and put it in her mouth. The pacifier was stained with the eldest brother's favorite milk, which had a slight sweetness to it. Once the pacifier was in her mouth, she subconsciously cheered and forgot to cry. Seeing that the eldest brother was quiet, the second brother accurately pulled the pacifier out of her mouth and put it in his own mouth. Her teeth weren't even fully grown yet, and she would always drool when she slept. It would be better to put a pacifier on her. How could the old commander accept being surrounded by so many people while drooling in his sleep? Such a dark history did not exist. Boss, who was in the middle of kicking. Fortunately, she also had her own pacifier. When the serving maid saw the situation, she brought her pacifier over. Only then did the first prince regain his composure. After playing with the pacifier for a while, she seemed to have gained endless strength from it. She skillfully propped herself up with her 2 hands and slowly stood up. He watched as the whole afternoon went by in an endless loop of walk quickly, jog, fall down, want to cry, put a pacifier to comfort her, recover her energy and continue to walk, jog again, fall down again, until he ran out of energy and hugged the old general to sleep. The old general didn't move much for the entire afternoon. Other than putting pacifiers into Boss's mouth, he spent the rest of his time lying in various positions and looking at Boss. When the boss insisted on hugging her to sleep, the old general would suck on his pacifier without moving an inch. The only time he was willing to take the initiative to get up was, she tilted her glasses and gave the servant woman who was taking care of her a biu-biu look. The servant woman had been taking care of her for a few months. She had long understood the meaning behind the little prince's various looks, raised eyebrows, and various small expressions. She carefully picked up the dirty first prince from the side of the little prince. The little prince stood up steadily and didn't need anyone's help to walk to the toilet cubicle. The toilet was also a small size. After using it, there would be someone to clean and spray deodorant, so there was no need to worry that the smell would stink her. Although she couldn't walk steadily, the old general's pride supported her to complete the arduous task of going to the toilet alone. She didn't want to be carried to the toilet like Boss. As a self-respecting baby, she refused to have anything that violated her privacy, such as the evil open-crotch pants. Of course, she still needed someone else to help her with things like bathing. After solving her physical needs, the old general went back to his sleeping place and lay down to think about life. The twins beside him seemed to have sensed it. They closed their eyes and rolled on the ground. After a while, they hugged the old general with both hands and feet. Tisk, little brats from the Jiang family. The old general accepted the baby's closeness. It was rare that he didn't push her away. She was similar to Jiang Pingji in terms of liking babies. The more they couldn't get something, the more they wanted it. Jiang Pingji had never caught a fish in her life. The old general was no different. He had killed so much that his murderous aura seeped into his soul. He didn't like small animals that were sensitive to smell the most. Her Highness Lian liked her and was close to her, so the old general was happy to treat her like a daughter. Of course, it would be great if the baby didn't bite her face or press half of her body on top of her in her dreams. The baby wasn't heavy, but the old general, who was also a baby, felt a little uncomfortable under the weight. Underscore smiley face, angle. Underscore about 10 months later, Boss, who could run 2 steps steadily without falling, discovered a new hobby. She wanted to walk and run hand in hand with her sister. The old commander sternly rejected the proposal. However, an adult couldn't understand a baby's stubbornness. She wouldn't give up until she found a new hobby. Na. The old general turned over lazily and didn't look at the baby's pitiful and expectant face. Seeing this, Boss got up and walked to the other side to sit down. He raised his hand and patted the old general's shoulder. The old general rolled his eyes and continued to turn over. Just like that, they tossed and turned for 2 hours until the boss was sleepy and yawning. Her stamina was exhausted. Smiley-faced and she couldn't fight anymore. The old general only needed to turn over while lying down, but she had to repeat the action of getting up, walking, sitting, and getting up again. Naturally, she was more exhausted. Seeing that his persistent sister had finally given up, the old general secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She really didn't want to turn over and over like a pancake. Smiley-faced, angle. Boss covered her small mouth and yawned twice. Suddenly, her small ears trembled and she became energetic as if she had been injected with chicken blood. Scare. The boss pointed at the door and shouted. After a while, footsteps approached. Wei Si, who was dressed in a lake blue scholar's robe, appeared against the sunlight. Boss got up and ran to Wei Si. She was a few steps away when her knees gave way and she almost fell. Wei Si reached out and caught her steadily, then bowed respectfully. Your subject, Wei Si, greets your highness. Boss said. Scare. The female servant stepped forward and bowed to Wei Si with a respectful expression. She carried the 2 princes to change into a set of clean clothes. Sir, why are you here so early today? While they were waiting, the female official serving the 2 princes greeted Wei Si. There weren't many trivial matters. I came after I was done. My lord has entrusted the important task of teaching your highness to me. I dare not disappoint her. I can only do my best to repay her, Wei Si said with a smile. How are the 2 of you doing today? That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.